to stay.
Hello and welcome back to Beyond Boards, a podcast dedicated to the actions and interests of skaters beyond skateboarding. My guest today, Michael Mealy, grew up near Sydney, Australia, where he started skating in the late 80s. In the early 90s, he got his first skate photos published in local skate magazine Slam, but quickly started drawing attention from American publications as well. In 1998, he moved to the US and settled down in New York City to work for Slap as a staff photographer. In the following years, he moved over to Skateboarder and eventually Transworld, while also working as the team photographer for Alien Workshop and Habitat in the mid-2000s. Aside from his iconic skate photography over the last 3 decades, Mike has also shot portraits, lifestyle photos, as well as stills on movie sets, among other things. So here's my conversation with Michael Mealy. I hope you'll enjoy it. Alright, let's start with this one.
Hi Mike, it's Jim Turvey here. I hope you're well. I've got a couple of questions for you. So the first one's about your halfpipe growing up in Roseville, and I was just wondering if anyone of note ever came and sessioned your ramp with you, and also if you ever skated the Roseville pipes. And my second question was, when did you first make your way into the city of Sydney to skate street, and were you already shooting photos by this time? If so, of who? And just one third quick question, which I'm sure somebody else will probably ask, but why was your nickname Jesse in the early days? Alright. Take care and hopefully see you soon. Peace.
That's a lot of good questions from Jim. He's awesome. I guess to answer the first one, so I don't think anyone of any great note came and skated my halfpipe, although Renton Millar was my friend when I first got it, and he used to come skate a lot, and he went on to become a pretty well-known skater, so probably sure. Renton's the first person, I think, but no other real big-time sponsored people or anything. I just had like a small halfpipe in my backyard. Mm-hmm. Actually, a few other well-known Australian skaters might have come. Like Mitch Newell came once, I think, and I'm trying to remember. It was a long time ago. Mm-hmm. Probably Renton's probably the most well-known. He was a really accomplished vert skater in his time. Yeah, he also went on to. He does a lot of stuff with I think skate park designs. I haven't talked to him in a few years actually. We kind of but we used to pal around a lot when we were probably 12 or 13. He was like one of my original skate buddies, and he was really good. Mm-hmm. He was advanced very quickly, and he used to come and skate my ramp before school, oftentimes without me. I would come down, get ready for school, and he'd already be over skating it. So that was pretty funny memory. But he was cool. What was the next question?
He said, when did you make your way into the city of Sydney to skate street? And were you already shooting photos by this time?
Okay, was there other question about the halfpipe or no? That was
yeah, that's right. And also if you ever skated the Roseville pipes, yes.
Oh yes, so I did skate the Roseville full pipes, not till I was a little bit older. And coincidentally enough, I went with Renton, I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. Like we were trying to shoot some photos, I think, for a Slam interview, and we definitely went there to try and do that. Actually, I remember that because he slipped out and his board did the thing where it does like maybe 3 or 4 loops, like whipping around, and it caught him in the back of the shoulder, and that kind of ended the session because he whipped out. And I think I skated them once, maybe twice before that, but just quickly because they were quite small in diameter and quite hard to skate. But I definitely went there. Yeah, so that was that's a good question. Now the next one was when did I first go into the city?
And were you shooting by this time? Were you already shooting photos?
Trying to think, I probably went into the city to skate before I started taking photos, but man, I know this is terrible, but it's actually quite hard to remember. I probably was street skating in the suburbs more so than before the city. Like I grew up near this, it's a suburban centre like Chatswood, so it had like street spots to skate. So I would skate a lot around there, but when I actually went into the city, I'm actually struggling to remember. I think it was coincidental with me taking photos, but I'm sure there were times I went in before that, but I don't know. It's all kind of blurry, mixed in together. Yeah. I don't have like a super categorical timeline memory of those things, but yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if that answers the question, but around the same time, I think. And then what was the third part of the question?
Your nickname, Jesse. Yeah, Jesse.
Oh, okay. So that nickname was given to me by skaters at my local vert ramp that I went to, Manly Curl Park. Mm-hmm. And my favorite skater was Jason Jesse, and I was like just a little young imitator, and I was pretty like, I just liked his style, and so I would crisscross my elbow pads. I would try and do some of the tricks that he did, but I was like completely, not capable to skate like that. But he was definitely my favorite skater, and I sort of, I don't know, I aspired to skate like him, I suppose, and like a lot of good nicknames in Australia, it just kind of stuck for a while. Yeah, and I don't know if it was given to me as like a diss or I don't know, but I don't know. I didn't mind it. I thought he was awesome. And funnily enough, I went on to meet him much later and shoot some cool photos of him, and he was always pretty cool. So that was pretty interesting. But yeah, that's where it comes from, vert skating days.
Yeah. And so you first started skating vert, right? Like
yeah, both. I mean, I've skated everything, but I was interested in skating vert, definitely.
Yeah.
The ramp I had in my backyard was a vert ramp. I mean, it just went to vert.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
And you started around the time that Back to the Future came out, right? So like around 86?
Yeah, definitely that was like an early inspiration to
catalyst.
To like, I remember seeing the movie and thinking, like, I had a skateboard before that, but I was just like, I didn't have any kind of like particular burning passion for it. And then I think I saw Back to the Future, and then within a short amount of time, I might have seen the Bones Brigade video show had it at my local video rental shop. And then there were some other kids that skated at my school and just around the neighborhood. And also there was some, I think there was like a mixed group of pros came out to do a demo in Australia, like Hosoi, Tony Hawk.
Oh, wow.
I can't remember exactly who, but I was quite young and I went to the demo and actually got a board stolen off me. So that was another.
Oh, shit.
I borrowed a friend's board because I had a crappy board, and he had a Santa Cruz Slasher, which is the phone call one, and those were quite expensive. And I don't know, he was a friend and he wasn't going to come, and I think I was a bit embarrassed I had a pink Veriflex Voodoo, and I asked him if I could take his board instead of mine to the demo, and I ended up getting jumped.
Shit. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was in the city at like a. I know Hosoi was there because I remember the ramp shaking, and I'm pretty sure Hawk and Lance Mountain. This would have been like 1986, something like that, pretty early. And there were some Alva demos. I don't know. My memory's kind of shot. It's all sort of mixed in together. But it was around that time, 12 or 13. That's when I would say that's also around the time that Back to the Future came out. So that's definitely what got me on the path.
Let's see. This next one is from Skin Phillips.
Oh, awesome.
Fellow legendary photographer.
Yeah, Skin's the man.
He said to ask you about your dad's hat collection and what he did for a living.
Okay, so my dad had a pretty large and interesting hat collection. I don't know when it started, maybe when he was still a student at the university, I think. But it ended up being something where friends who would travel to other countries would either bring a gift of a hat from that country to my dad, or when he ended up going to countries, he would collect the hat.
Yeah. And
so he had this crazy hat collection. He had like, a Moroccan fez, like a Portuguese conquistador's helmet, which is extremely uncomfortable, like the traditional like Chinese, Vietnamese rice paddy hat, and just memories as a kid, like loads of others, like a Mao Chinese military cap with a red star.
Yeah, okay.
Just all kinds of stuff. And they would come out at dinner parties. And that's cool that Skin remembers. Yeah, anyone that would sort of come around, like, and, some of my friends probably either requested or had the hat collection shown to them or whatever. So, yeah, it was just kind of a sort of a family tradition, I guess.
Yeah.
And then my dad was, he was actually a judge in the Workers' Compensation Court.
Okay.
So he would hear trials of people that were injured at work and award them money or not money if they were injured. But then he also, later in his career, he went on to be a president of the Dust Diseases Tribunal, which is a specific court that Australia uniquely as a country set up for men that worked with asbestos, and as a result they got mesothelioma and carcinogenic lung diseases as a result of exposure to those fibers. So he ended up presiding over this special court for men that sort of were, men and women that were, injured and became sick as a result of working with that. So he, basically his job was deciding how much money the insurance companies of these big corporations should pay to sick. And wow. He had a pretty, it was quite an interesting job because it was part criminal law, like criminal negligence in the workplace, but also medical, a lot of medical evidence, and it was quite pioneering in sort of legal circles. Like, I think Australia still to this day is one of the, if not the only, one of very few countries that has a special litigation set up to deal with that. So that's what he did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He just passed away in October, actually. But,
okay.
He served on the bench as a judge for a long time, actually. Yeah. So, but he'd been retired since 2011.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what he did.
So this one is from Renton Millar, who you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, growing up in Chatswood, your environment was a menagerie of various colorful characters. Would you like to perhaps enlighten the audience to any interesting individuals like James Van Bray and his snake-catching ways, or perhaps Billy the Hoon?
That is cool. That is so funny that he mentioned that, because I recently just had a message from James Van Bray on Instagram, and he was sort of a local Chatswood guy. He was a character, and he was quite a good surfer and pretty good skater as well, and he just had a bit of a, I don't know, like, I don't want to say, I'm not sure how to describe it, intense personality. Like, he was just a pretty vibrant guy, a lot of energy, and one day he came to skate the ramp. This is so funny because I was literally just messaging him within the last 2 or 3 months about this, just out of nowhere. I hadn't spoken to the guy in years. But there was a carpet python had nestled its way into just behind the coping and the platform of my ramp.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't really know it at the time, but they're not venomous or anything. But, it's a snake, like it's a good sized snake. And we were all just like, whoa, what do we do? And the one thing I remember about James is that he was not in the least bit frightened, and he just reached in and pulled the snake
grabbed
out
it?
and grabbed it, and he took it home in his backpack.
Oh my God.
As a pet, I guess. And he knew that there was like a non-venomous snake, and that it was, James Van Bray, man, that's interesting.
Wow. Crazy.
He was one of the guys that we skated with.
Okay.
I think he told me just over the messages that the snake might have been slightly in bad health. I think he sort of had to take it and nurse it back to health. But he was a pretty good skater. Like, he was a charger. I remember him just going for it whenever he skated, and just one of the local sort of neighborhood guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then Billy the Hoon, I think maybe he means this guy Bill Harris from Manly. I'm not sure, man. I'm really struggling to remember but if it is Billy, I don't know. I can't remember who Billy the Hoon was. I know there was Billy Harris that I skated with from Manly, and he was a good guy, but I don't know if he was a local neighborhood character. I don't know.
Okay.
James Van Bray, though, for sure.
This one is from Dave Swift.
Okay, cool.
So he said, Mike, when you started shooting skateboarding in the 1990s, did you get any help/tips from other photographers that were successfully shooting skateboarding? Who and what did they tell you?
That's a great question. Certainly, I sent some photos over to Transworld, and Grant, I think, he definitely gave me some tips. Or I remember he had that published letter in Transworld that was like his little kind of a cheat sheet, pointers for aspiring photographers.
Okay. Oh yeah.
And I still have a letter on old Transworld letterhead somewhere in all my archives and stuff. Yeah, so Grant was certainly helpful, and Lance Dawes was another one that was very helpful, more so encouraging than rather technical information. And there was Andrew Curry was also somebody that was certainly helpful and encouraging in the beginning, and he was running the magazine, so he was very enthusiastic about me shooting more and submitting stuff into the magazine. Trying to think who else. Yes, Thomas Campbell sent me some film. That was a little bit later on, maybe in the mid-90s. I'd been shooting for a while. That was for Skateboarder magazine. And yeah, I don't know. It was different. It was in Australia, so you're doing everything via mail back in the 90s. You couldn't really get that sort of on-hand technical support, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. I really have to think about that now. Definitely Grant was helpful. I remember the first time I went to the US, I had a camera shipped to Transworld, which was nice. They let me do that, and then I went to pick it up. I'm really trying to think. It's hard, man.
Yeah.
Definitely Grant, Lance Dawes. Tobin was always super encouraging.
Oh yeah, Tobin Yelland.
Dave himself, I don't remember having lots of interaction with Dave in the beginning, but he was pretty he was around for sure. And then there are a few guys in Australia, but I think they weren't technically they weren't supportive in that way. It was more It was sort of, there was very few people shooting. Yeah, it was a little sort of, yeah, it was a small pie, I think. I definitely remember feeling like I had to figure it out for myself.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
They weren't going to help you out, yeah.
No, I don't think so.
And when you went to, because I know you moved eventually to New York in, I think, 98, but did you go to the States prior to that?
I did. I went the first time in 1994 just with some friends, like my friend Nathan Ho, and then we met up with some other. Christian West was another guy that was staying already in San Diego, and I think Andrew Curry was already there as well. So I met up with them, and I stayed about a month the first time, and that was a pretty eventful trip. Started out in San Diego and then drove up to Los Angeles, and that's what we met up with Andrew, who was skating for Santa Monica Airlines at that time. So he was staying with Skip Engblom, and we skated with Salman Agar. That was cool, at the Venice Pier and just around like the Santa Monica Beach and Venice area. And then drove up to San Francisco, slept a night in Yosemite National Park in the car. Used a board. I remember we met up with Jesse Martinez, and I had a stereo board that I just bought from Rip City there in Santa Monica.
Oh yeah.
And his friend had just got out of jail. He asked me if he could ride it, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And he rolled off those big picnic tables that were in the original Santa Monica Venice Beach pit, like with all the graffiti and the ledges. And unfortunately snapped the tail, and then I guess Jesse, being the stand-up guy that he's like, oh man, he felt bad, and he skated off and he got me, he came back with a Z-Roller blank, like the unvarnished wooden blank, and it just had the Z-Roller logo, like, psst, like, you know, burnt into the top. Anyway, we ended up using that for firewood later in Yosemite National Park. Wow. And the end of that trip was back in San Diego, and I saw Jeremy Ray frontside 360, the Carlsbad Gap, on the last day that I was in the US. So that was my first trip over there, so it was pretty eventful. There were a lot of other things that happened too, but I don't know, save those for another time. And then I visited one or two other times. I think once in 96 I just went to San Francisco to visit Lance Dawes and just sort of hang around there for a bit. And then another time in 97 I went to go on a Zero tour across the US, which I shot for Transworld, and that's when I first went to New York and skated around with Keith Huffnagel and met a few other people, and yeah. So really only a handful of times. I think that's probably 3 times before I moved there. Once in 94, once in 96, and once in 97, from what I can remember, yeah. So I moved there in 98.
Let's see. This next one I have is from Trent Fahey from Slam.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, what is your most memorable moment or moments of your time editing Slam? And he just added, Mike took over for Andrew Curry for a while when Andrew was in the States in the mid-90s.
Yeah, it wasn't very long. I don't think it was maybe even a whole year. I probably only put out 3, maybe 4 issues, maybe 2 or 3, I can't remember. But probably my most memorable times was editing it with Andrew, actually. That was when I had the most fun, and we just seemed to click, and putting together photo issues was probably my favorite, just because it was literally just picking photos and not having to do any words or articles. And I just remember that being really enjoyable. Mm-hmm. I'm sure partly because a lot of the photos are my own. Mm-hmm. But I think at that time there was only me and probably 2 or 3 other photographers shooting in the whole of Australia. So wow. It was just sort of an interesting time where I was sort of running Andrew went to the States to skate. Yeah. And I don't know, I can't remember particularly anything interesting while I was doing it by myself. I sort of more enjoyed doing it with Andrew, I think. Mm-hmm. I just remember feeling quite stressed out, actually. Yeah. There were a few good moments, like putting together a few of the interviews. Those were good. I just mostly enjoyed shooting, I think. I don't think I got so much of a thrill out of editing it. I did enjoy it at the time, but looking back on it, I don't know. I can't remember anything particular at this moment that stands out. Yeah.
I was listening yesterday to, you did this interview for, I think it's called the Photo Banter podcast or something like that, a few years ago.
Oh, maybe, yeah. I don't know. Years ago, yeah.
You mentioned in there that you had like a very limited amount of roles, you could use for a whole issue. I don't remember the exact amount, but you were on a really tight budget and couldn't really shoot a whole lot of photos. So it must have been a lot of pressure.
Yeah, well, the magazine was very small. It only came out, I think, pretty sure it was only 4 times a year back then. And it wasn't a lot of pages because the industry was just
tiny,
small, and there weren't enough companies advertising to they would only print as many pages as they sold ads for. So I think some of the issues were, I don't know, I don't have them on hand, but, small, like 50, 75 pages maybe.
Yeah.
Still colour and good quality, but not very thick,
Yeah.
So the editorial budget wasn't very big either. I think it was 20 rolls of film.
Okay.
Which, I mean, if you're efficient, you could fill a whole issue with that. But skating being skating, if you want to try and shoot a sequence or just... Yeah. It wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
So I probably ended up buying at least some more, probably as many rolls of that on my own. But I don't know. At the time, I guess it was challenging, but I think that's what makes you sort of learn. You want to get proficient and efficient with your...
Yeah, you get a limited amount of tries, yeah.
Yeah, you get a limited amount of tries, and you also get probably a bit more selective with what you're shooting, I think. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I did my best.
Yeah. No, it worked out.
The best of it, yeah.
Okay, this one is from Joe Brook.
Yeah, what's up, Joe? Joe's the man.
He said, I would ask Mike about his transition from Australia to America as a skateboard photographer. I think Lance Dawes helped Mike a lot to transition into skate photography in the US via Slap. Has he shot the cover of every skate magazine? And his last question is, how long did he live in New York for? And does he miss New York?
Good questions. So, yeah, Lance was definitely the one that sort of... he's originally the one that asked me if I would come and work for Slap, and
right.
As a young photographer, I think I was probably 22 or 23 at the time. I just couldn't believe it. That was Slap. In my mind, was my favorite magazine. So to be asked to do that was just it was really. I was really humbled and excited by that at the same time.
Yeah.
So basically, Lance has this way about him where he's encouraging, but he gives you enough. I don't know. He just made me believe that it was possible, I suppose. He didn't sort of spell anything out or line too much up for me, but he just made me feel like that I could do it, and he just sort of lined me up with enough of the right people that, I don't know, it just felt like I could do it. Yeah. So, he just gave me, I don't know, I felt like he believed in me, basically. Mm-hmm. And that was enough, really. There were a few bumps along the way just with getting the work visa sorted and a few other things. I didn't get paid for the first 6 months. Not through anything to do with Lance at all. That's just the way it worked out with High Speed, the company, and the work visa and whatever. So that was, it was a few times towards the end of that first 6 months that I was like, this isn't really going to work, because I was just broke. I didn't have any money. I was surviving off what little savings I had. And I definitely thought about just, okay, it's not really going to work out. I'll just move home. But I stuck with it. Yeah, but Lance was just always encouraging and, was excited when I sent good stuff in, and he would run photos big, and that gave me a lot of encouragement, I think, in the early days.
Yeah.
So as far as transitioning to the US, I don't know, it was just kind of dive in the deep end, basically, and just figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's too much else to say about that other than I just had to figure it out. Lance told me to get a pager. That was pretty cool.
To get a pager.
A pager, so.
It took me a second to remember what that was. Yeah.
People who live in New York will know what that is, or people in America will know what that is. But yeah, it's a electronic device where you could receive just callback messages, right. Not even voice messages, just call this number.
Yeah, just call me back. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's funny is I'm not sure if I really used it a lot, but I don't know. That was one of the things that I didn't have that in Australia, and that's why I was like, this is really different having a pager.
I'm an American now. I have a pager.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. That was one of those things that made me... And then shortly afterwards, once I got a bit more settled there, I got a cell phone, and I kept that number until just the last few years when I left. Actually, even after I left. When I was back in Australia. Mm-hmm. But... Yeah, and the next part of the question was...
he asked if you had shot the cover of every skate magazine.
No, I haven't. A few. Certainly Slap, certainly Skateboarder magazine, and Transworld.
Transworld? Thrasher?
And, I never shot a Thrasher cover, and I never shot a Big Brother cover, I don't believe.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I mentioned Sugar earlier, in France.
Sugar, I had a few, and there might have been one or two other...
In the UK, probably?
I don't think I ever had a UK cover. Not one that I can remember.
Okay.
There's a few other random ones, but I don't know. I don't have the categorical memory to recite them all to you right now.
For sure. Yeah. No, of course.
And then the last part of the question...
Yeah, how long did you live in New York for, and do you miss it?
I lived in New York from 1998 till about 2004, I think was when so it was about 5-6 years on and off. But the last 2-3 of those years I was going back and forth to Los Angeles a lot. Yeah, but I don't know if I would say I miss it, but I certainly had a good time when I lived there, and I made a lot of good friends, and, you know, some inescapable events happened. Like, I was there during 9/11, so that's, like, definitely something that's etched into my memory forever. And just good time skating when I was there. Like, definitely all the times with Barbee and Keith Hufnagel and, you know, Peter Bici and the Keith brothers and Tino Razzo and just a lot of other friends that I met while I was living there, skating around. It was a good time, man. Got to see a lot of other stuff outside of the skate world, like art galleries and different artists and just street life in New York. You know, like, looking back, I wouldn't say I regret not taking photos of more of that kind of stuff, but I think I was just so zoned in on the skate world. But
of course, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed my time living there. I don't know if I would say that I don't miss it like I would want to live back there again, but who knows? I don't know. It was good time. It was good times while I lived there for sure.
It's interesting that you chose to go there because I mean, even to this day, California stays, the epicenter of skateboarding, the industry and everything.
Yeah.
And New York has become a much bigger skate scene than it was back in the day. But I think it's interesting that you decided to go there instead of in California, which would have been probably a more assumed kind of decision, you know?
Yeah, it's funny. I think maybe meeting Keith Hufnagel in Australia might have helped influence that, because I was already such a fan of his skating.
Sure.
And just of many other East Coast skaters already. So I think that's probably maybe influenced my decision. But also, I just didn't really want to go. Well, also New York just seemed really fascinating to me as a city for many reasons, as it is to many people. But also, I just had a feeling I didn't want to go to California and just be another California skate photographer. I don't know. Maybe I was just... I didn't have anything against it, but New York just had a bit more of an appeal to me for whatever reason. Maybe because it wasn't so popular, and I don't know. Maybe it's being so far away in Australia, it seemed more appealing. I don't know. It just had that sort of grittiness that I found really spoke to me, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it.
This next person who asked the question is Catharine Lyons.
Oh, awesome, yeah.
Who was your roommate back in the day in New York.
That's right, yeah.
So let's see, I'll read you her whole question. So she said, Mike and I were roommates for many years. I had a 4-bedroom apartment in Chelsea that was a 6th floor walk-up, but actually that was 7 floors up, because when the building was built, they counted the ground floor as the parlor floor or something, then started with one on the 2nd floor, plus there were stairs outside the building too, so a lot of stairs. The bedrooms were all quite small. Mike's was the 2nd smallest, which was funny because he's not a small guy. Or an Australian nature show, he's a large male. I can't say it with you, Australian accent.
Yeah, it's okay.
She said, in the 15 years that I had the apartment, there were something like 49 paying roommates and an uncountable number of long-staying and short-term guests. I don't remember how many years Mike lived there. Mike usually would head somewhere warm for winter and leave a subletter in his room. Maybe you could ask him about living in that apartment, what it was like to show up in NYC with all his stuff, and if I recall, an unannounced girlfriend in town too, moving into the tiny room at the top of all those fucking stairs. Plus, as a photographer, his backpack was always super heavy. And you can ask about some of the apartment shenanigans. The roommates were a mix of all sorts of creative people, skaters, musicians, surfers, fashion people, DJs, filmmakers, etc., etc. Honestly, that apartment would have made great material for a 90s TV show like A Real Friends. And then she completed with a little trivia. Keith Hufnagel asked me for the room for him and introduced us. And she finished by saying, ask him to send me his new address because his Christmas card we just sent came back.
Man, that question's awesome. Now, Catherine is honestly, like, I couldn't have hoped for a better, like, roommate. She was like a big sister. She was like a friend. She was just so cool, man. She was like totally reasonable, but also fair and take no bullshit, like a classic East Coast New York lady, but very warm and welcoming. And yeah, I remember the first night that I got there, that's right, Keith did like Keith had lined up the apartment because I think Scott Johnson
that's what I heard. Scott Johnson was leaving the room.
Yeah, he was moving out.
Yeah.
And Keith said, hey, that's kind of almost what spawned the decision of me to move there, is that there was somewhere available to live, because the job with Lance was an offer, but, I didn't really, I didn't know anything about New York. I didn't have anywhere to, so this kind of, knowing that I had somewhere to stay was a big...
motivation.
It started to become a reality, and it was motivating. So the first night I went there, Catherine used to be a bartender at this bar in Niagara, and she would get off work maybe, I think, 3 or 4 in the morning. So I'm pretty sure I had to wait on that same stoop that she was talking about until she got back from her shift, because I didn't have keys. And I think Andrew Curry was with me because we were leaving the very next day to go on a Silver Star tour with Ricky Oyola and a bunch of other guys. So I had my camera bag, my big bag from Australia, I'm moving to America with all my stuff. And we were just sitting on the stoop waiting for Catherine to get home from work. And
in the middle of the night.
I don't remember exactly what time it was, but it was the middle of the night. And it was summer in New York, so it was, we were just sitting there hanging, basically. Yeah. And she was cool, man. We went up all those stairs. That's funny that she was so specific about how many flights it was, because I used to always tell people it was a 6-floor walk up, but she's right. It was actually
7 to 8.
An extra flight or two. So these are the things I remember. It's like, don't forget your wallet or your keys when you're leaving the house.
Yeah.
I'm sure I attempted to carry certain things up that flight of stairs that I had no business or reason to. And the room it had a small bed. I had probably a queen-size futon in there, but there was probably only not even a foot
a few inches
either side
on
of
each,
the bed.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a small room.
A closet.
And then as for the girlfriend, she came at the end. I think at the end. Oh, yeah. She was living in Japan at the time, and we had sort of split up, but anyway, we don't need to worry about that. Anyway, Catherine was cool about it, but I think she came and stayed I'd been there maybe a couple of months, and then, Catherine was cool enough to let her stay as well. And then, I remember all the different roommates. Well, the ones that I knew, one of the first ones was this guy, Alan Cage, who's the drummer for a band, Quicksand, and various other New York hardcore groups. I couldn't tell you all the groups he's been in, but he was a pretty eccentric, funny guy, and just like a roommate. Always wanting to borrow my scissors and things like that, because I had a tiny little desk in that room where I would cut up my film and get all my slides packaged up for the magazine. And I think I even tried to shoot some product shots for Alien Workshop in that room, with the big lights set up over me. And it was a small room, and it got really hot. So Alan Cage, the drummer, lived there. Chris Shiflett, the guitarist who went on to become guitarist for the Foo Fighters.
Oh, wow.
He was my roommate for a time.
Amazing.
Those are the two that were while I was living there, they were like my regular roommates, as well as Catherine was there the entirety. She was sort of like the
landlord.
Not the landlord.
But running the apartment.
She was she had the lease. It was I believe it was in her name.
Okay.
So, and I can't remember, but she's correct that I would come December, I would usually fly out to either California and then Australia, and then I'd come back to New York maybe March or April, something like that, once it started warming up a little bit more.
Yeah. Did you stay there the whole time you were in New York, from 98 to 2004?
Oh, that apartment? Yeah, I did. That's the only place I lived, So I had stayed in that apartment I stopped paying rent in that apartment, I think in around, I want to say 2004 probably is when I finally stopped paying rent there.
Okay.
Maybe end of 2003.
And at that point you had relocated fully to the West Coast?
Yeah, I was sort of subletting in Los Angeles with Greg Hunt for a little while, and then there was a time there where I was paying rent for the room in New York and paying some kind of rent in LA as well, but very cheap either way, because it was just the room. I think when I first moved in, it was something like $380 a month.
Oh my god!
Which is by today's standards,
today it's probably
really
2,000 or something. Yeah, probably even more.
Yeah, I mean you're paying that a week easily for something. Yeah, so that was another reason why it's part of the reason why I was able to move there, because it was a cheap room, and I didn't have a lot of money, and I was just trying to make my way as a photographer, and little bits of money coming in here and there, but not a lot.
What was the crossing streets in New York? She said, I think it was in Chelsea.
On the corner of West 24th Street. So it was in between 9th Avenue and 10th Avenue, but closer to the 9th Avenue side.
Okay.
Yeah, 401 West 24th Street, apartment 18. And it was a lot of flights of stairs.
Yeah. That's a good location because you can kind of go all over Manhattan and
it was pretty good. It was close. It was close to the West 23rd Street train station, and you could skate up the west side pretty easily or down to It was a good location. Just trying to think. What else did she ask you about?
Just about like the apartment shenanigans and just living there and like good memories from that time.
Yeah, definitely. There was I don't remember. It wasn't like a crazy party style apartment, but I think by the time anyone got up there, it was such an accomplishment to get all the way up the stairs. You're pretty exhausted.
Yeah.
So it was. I mostly just slept and did my photography little whatever I had to do for that, and But I mean, it was home for a good 5 years there, and whatever situations came with that, and just learning about life in New York City and America, and trying to just get my photos good, and just hunched over that tiny little desk in that little room, and hot summer nights with no air conditioning, and it was just a humble little New York life, really, that sort of thousands of other people try and do the same thing. But I will say that the stairs, I think it kept me fit.
Well,
as much as I was exhausted from skating around all day, if I could make it to the top of the stairs, then,
It's good cardio.
And I was younger too, but it was character building, I think. There's some kind of metaphor in there, I think, but I don't know exactly what it is. Climbing a mountain every day just to get home.
Well, on the topic of New York, I have this other question. This one is from Peter Bici.
Oh, awesome.
He said to ask you about one early morning in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, where he did a surprise visit to my firehouse on Pitt Street.
Well, that was a time where I was out in New York shooting, and I'd been out pretty late, I think. In fact, I probably just did not go to sleep that night.
Mm-hmm.
And I came by the firehouse. I had been there previously to shoot a little story that I was working on for Transworld about, it was called Don't Quit Your Day Job.
Okay.
And I included him as well as a bunch of different other guys, skaters that had gone on to do other professions, such as ambulance driver, a doctor, so on. So I'd done one on Peter, and I had met, I went to the firehouse and shot a portrait of him and met a few of the guys. Anyway, I think I was out late, just, carrying on New York style, and then I just popped in to see him, I think. I was probably still pretty in a good mood from the night before, I guess, as they say. Trying to be discreet about it. But I don't know. I think he was pretty happy to see me. I would like to think. We have a good friendship over the years. Yeah, Peter was another one actually that when I first moved to New York, he was super welcoming, and we drove out to somewhere in Queens in his dad's beat up old car. I think it was like a Cutlass or some kind of Cadillac. Anyway, I shot a photo that ended up running as a Zoo York ad. And he was cool, man. I think I had a little bit of a connect with him because he was married to Elska at the time. She was Australian, and he had been to Australia, and I met him randomly in Sydney, actually, just super briefly. But so it was good. We just had like a good connection, and he has super witty sense of humor, and just able to like understand the Australian sense of humor. And he was like an honorary Australian basically, at least when he was in Australia for sure. And I don't know, he's just another person along with Catherine that just made it feel so like they made you feel like part of their family, like just the way they weren't like exclusive,
super welcoming
in any way. Yeah, absolutely. So got a lot of love for Peter for sure. I will tell one story about him. It's probably fine, but before I was going to shoot the article for Transworld, I don't know if you know this, but Peter done some modelling earlier in the 90s, and he had a huge billboard in Times Square where he was in a picture with Kate Moss.
Oh, wow.
Calvin Klein. I think it was for CK1.
Okay.
Anyway, when I went to shoot the article, he was still what they call a probie, like probationary fire officer. So he hadn't fully like graduated, but he was in the firehouse and going out on runs and this and that. So it was a little bit of for me to come and shoot photos of him, it was just basically, he told me the culture of the firehouse is that because the work can be so grim and, you see a lot of upsetting things sometimes and stressful and difficult, you see like, they're really just chopping each other up all day, making jokes and, some really dark humor, but also you got to have a really thick skin basically, which, I think mentally it helps for the job.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he's like, all right, Mike, so I know you're coming in to shoot these photos and they know that I used to be a pro skater and they give me loads of stick about that and it's fine. He's like, but whatever you do, under no circumstance, do not mention that I used to be a model. I was like, all right.
Oh, okay.
Because I think he was just worried that they would just tear into pieces.
Yeah, they were going to give him a lot of shit. Yeah.
So I managed to stay quiet for Pete about that. But yeah, it was cool meeting all the other guys. They were pretty funny. Real life New York City firefighters, you know, like.
Yeah. That must have been interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was really cool. And another one of those things where you just sort of think like just all the interesting people you meet through skateboarding, and like credit to Peter for going on and becoming like a fully realized, registered, certified New York City firefighter. You know, like, it's not easy apparently. The physical
I'm sure it's
the physical test and just all the other technical aspect of it that you have to know. So
and like you said, it's a difficult job. My cousin who lives on the same floor than me, right next door, he's a fireman as well. He's been for a couple years and told me some stories of stuff he deals with on a daily basis, and it's gnarly. It's really gnarly.
Yeah.
So and I assume in a city like New York, it must be even gnarlier. Like the amount of craziness you're confronted with every day. It's I can't even imagine.
Absolutely.
Well, I think this is the last New York question, but
okay.
This one is from Rob Pluhowski.
Oh, nice. Hot Rob.
He said, which did you like better, living in New York or Los Angeles, and why?
Oh, that's a fairly simple question from Rob. Well, I will say, like, at the time when I first moved to Los Angeles, I hated it.
Oh, yeah? Really?
I did not like it. I did not like it at all because I missed New York. I didn't really know where I was going or what I was doing in LA. And honestly, like, I feel like I was depressed for the first at least 2 years of living in LA. I sort of felt pressure from the magazine to move there, but maybe that was just in my own sort of insecurity of like worried about losing my job and thinking that I should be in California, and also maybe wanting to make a change. So in the beginning, I really didn't like Los Angeles. And I just missed the vibrant aspect of New York, and I didn't really drive so much, so I had to I sort of just started driving a lot in Los Angeles, and you're in the car for long periods of time, so there was lots about it that I didn't like. The water was on the west coast and I grew up in Australia where the water was on the east coast, so that was very, I don't know why, it was very discombobulating to me. It sort of threw me off.
I never thought about that, but yeah, it's interesting.
So I will say Los Angeles grew on me after quite a number of years, but if I was to choose, like, I did really enjoy my time in New York. I can't really compare them. I mean, I don't know if I don't think he's coming at that out of any sort of East Coast pride, or maybe he is, I don't know, but just the friends I made, I think the sense of humor and just the sensibilities and just the ability to like chop it up with each other and take the piss out of each other. Like I didn't really have that in Los Angeles as much. And I think that's maybe why I didn't enjoy it as much, because just the interactions with people were not necessarily bad. I just wasn't used to it. Yeah, in the beginning, I just didn't really know how to navigate it, and it was just different. But I don't know. To answer Rob's question, I definitely loved the time that I had in New York for sure. Yeah, no contest. But I mean, Los Angeles ended up becoming my home in the end.
Yeah. You spent. How long did you stay in? LA
it's probably in the end it would have been like 16 years, 2004 to about 2020.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was just gonna say, Rob was another one that I really he just made my experience in America, but certainly New York and Philly, just all that much more memorable, because I first met Rob in Philly, and I used to go down, I actually would stay with him. We just hit it off for whatever reason, and yeah, he just showed me around, and then he ended up moving up to New York City with Anthony Pappalardo, and we used to skate a lot together with those two in particular.
Yeah.
And yeah, just good memories, and just like, I really liked those guys because they didn't take themselves too seriously. Like they were definitely about it, and they wanted to do well and be good at skating, but they just had this, I suppose I could really relate to it, because I think Australians have a bit of a, I don't want to say insecurity complex is the wrong word, but like, we're down away from the rest of the world. We maybe think that we have a bit of an underdog mentality, I think.
Yeah.
And I felt like I really, like Rob, certainly Anthony Pappalardo and Rob, they related to that a lot, being from the East Coast, and the sense of humor and things that we would make fun of and stuff like it. We really just sort of it was a similar understanding of that. Yeah. So I had a lot of good laughs with those guys, as well as taking some really cool skate photos and all the rest of it. So yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, Rob was definitely a favorite. We still stay in touch here and there. So
I saw.
big shout out to Rob.
I think he did a piece. Jenkin did a piece on him on his like furniture, right? Like he
Okay, yeah. No, his furniture's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks. I remember seeing that and being like, I hadn't heard about him in a while, and I was like, oh, that's sick.
Yeah.
Like he's doing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It seems like he's doing good and being creative and everything, and it's pretty.
Yeah,
rad,
I mean that's
so
one
good for him.
person that I really think about when I think of skaters that have actually gone on to get their shit together.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
For somebody that was like, he used to think like, oh, I'm never going to be pro, or like he was kind of started to get a little bit not down on himself, but I don't know,
Not super confident.
but no, I mean just in a way he wasn't really sort of chasing it as hard as
Other people.
maybe some other guys. You know, he sort of knew his place, but it's just cool what he ended up doing, like,
Yeah.
and how successful he's become, and just how creative he is. Some of the stuff he does is, I trip out on it. It's incredible. And just to think that's somebody that I used to skate around blocks and blocks and blocks, like talking shit, looking for skate spots. It's cool to see what people go on and
Become
achieve.
later in
So,
life.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so this one is from Anthony Van Engelen,
Oh, cool.
someone that you shot many epic photos with, of course.
Yeah, definitely got a few good ones.
He said, ask Mike if he remembers the first thing we ever shot together, and ask him what was the highlight for him on the Spain trip with me, Big John, Dill, Gilbert, and Cody.
Wow, okay. Let me think. I'm trying to think. The first thing...
Do you remember the day you met him? That's probably hard, but yeah.
No, but I think the first thing that we shot, or certainly the first thing I shot that I remember that got used, was in New York. There's that, it's down in Chinatown. It's about a 7 or 8 cell rail that people do tricks over the back of.
Yeah, sure.
Like
he did
done,
back nose grind, back 5-0, switch back 5-0.
Yep, exactly. And so I think he went over the back to 50-50.
Yeah.
And I think that's the first thing anyone did on that rail. Certainly the first over the back trick anyone.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that sticks out in my mind, that's the first thing I shot with
The footage was in photosynthesis, I believe.
I think so, that's right, yeah. And that's probably around the first time. I know we went on some Alien Workshop trips and we might have shot a few other things, but that's the first thing I really remember shooting. I mean, if there's something else and I don't remember, I'm sorry about that, but that's one that really sticks out to me.
And later you shot also the back nose grind that he did, right? I think.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Were you there when he did the switchback 5-0 as well, or not?
No, that was somebody, Jared Sherbet shot that one.
Oh, okay.
No, I think made the cover of Thrasher, maybe, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The nose grind photo is amazing. Yeah, one of...
Yeah, that was in a Transworld interview.
Yeah, super sick photo.
Yeah,
it turned out great. And yeah, what about the Spain trip?
I'm trying to... that was a good trip. We definitely got a few things. Honestly, like, I could talk about all the skating, but the first thing that pops into my head, just because Anthony asked that question, is I remember coming into his room and he and Greg Hunt, like, they were in sort of hysterical laughter, and Anthony had been drawing these postcards with, like, this, like, really steroided out bodybuilder, and he was sending it back home.
Okay.
It was just something small, but like he was just taking so much joy and pleasure in like laughing about this postcard.
Okay.
And that just I just really remember that he, like, because a lot of the time he's like can be quite
he's serious.
He's pretty like
tough.
Yeah, not so much serious, but he's definitely got like more of a sort of I would say like a harder exterior, I guess.
Yeah.
And man, I just remember walking into this room and he was just having such a good time drawing this picture of this guy, and he was like super big muscles, but like I think he had like a Speedo on, and just the proportions were really funny. And I have a picture of him drawing it, and he just had this grin on his face, man. And I don't know, that was kind of one of those wild trips where like, he was sober. I certainly wasn't. I think even me and Greg got a little buzz together on that trip.
Do you remember what year that might have been?
That was probably 12, I want to say, 12 or 13.
Okay, so that's post Minefield.
Yeah. If it was a van.
You mentioned Big John Fitzgerald, so I don't think he was skating for the workshop back in 2009.
Yeah,
or
I think it was.
that.
I remember because So who did he say? It was John.
He said John, Dill, Gilbert, Cody. What's his name? Is it Cody?
Yeah, Cody Green.
Cody Green. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of things happened on that trip. I remember I brought my son, who was probably slightly, maybe 13 months old at the time.
Oh wow.
So yeah, that was interesting. I do remember also Dill was trying to skate this rail,
Mm-hmm.
and it was sort of at the corner of a mechanics, and we were sort of out in the cuts of Barcelona a little bit, and this guy was not too happy about skating. And anyway, I've got some pretty limited basic Spanish, but essentially he said, like, you know, if you guys don't piss off, like, I'm going to bring my guys back here and we're going to beat the shit out of you if you don't leave.
Yikes.
Anyway, I just remember Dill trying this trick and not being able to get it, and like somebody threw a bucket of water out of the apartments trying to get him to leave, and Dill being Dill, he's just really determined to get it, and he didn't end up getting it, but we ended up leaving it. But I just remember Anthony looking at me, he's like, we should go, and I was like, yeah, dude, we're going to get the shit kicked out. This guy looked angry, you know, he was mad. Anyway, so that's two little memories. And then I remember Anthony got quite a few good tricks on that trip, actually, from what a couple of things maybe. I don't know, for whatever reason, that thing about the postcard is just the one that pops into my brain. Yeah, sorry, my memory.
No, that's cool. I like that. Yeah. Was Dill sober as well at that time, or?
Yeah, like newly sober, I think, on that trip. He wasn't drinking, but definitely smoking a lot of weed.
Okay, yeah. Was he in that kind of phase where he was, you know, like in shape and skating and determined and all that stuff?
He was absolutely ripped. He was so in shape. He was like probably too in shape. Like he needed to eat a little bit more. I think he was like really
skinny.
Yeah, to the point where like another thing happened where he had his shirt off, and like some old guy in Barcelona came and told him to put his shirt back on because he was covered in tattoos actually, and like.
Oh, he was like he thought it was offensive or something, or.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Here I found it. For some reason, I've only got the back of the postcard, but. On the postcard, he's written, get ripped, cut your cock off, like cut you are cock off. So I think it's just basically making a joke about weightlifters that like when they do steroids, they're like, you know, shrinks.
Yeah.
But he was just in hysterics. So he had this drawing and it was just really, really funny.
And he was like super laughing about it, and
Yeah, he was just like cracking himself up, and just Greg as well. They were both just... I don't know. It was just one of those stupid things where you're a bit delirious you've been on the road, and just the funniest little things. Like, there it is. Okay, this is what it was. I've got it now. So it's this guy, and he's like doing like the classic muscle builder pose. Like here, I'm imitating it right now, and I'll send you the picture.
Yeah.
But he's like cut out the guy's face, and he's got a picture from somewhere, and he's put his own face on there, like Anthony himself as the bodybuilder.
Okay.
Anyway, it was just really, I don't know. It sounds so
silly.
Stupid to try. It was silly, but I just remember, it was one of those moments where I just remember, like, man, this guy's actually, he really, you know, he's not as...
There's a funny guy beneath all this kind of gnarliness.
Like, and having like, it's one of those things where you don't get to see it a lot, but he's got a really wicked sense of humor, I think, after, like, I sort of got to know him a bit better after, well, I knew him quite well at that stage, but, like, I just remember it sticking out as, like, it was just really enjoyable to see him enjoying himself I guess.
Yeah, it was a nice contrast to what you were usually seeing.
Exactly, yeah. And it was cool because it was like a bit of just a pressure drop, because, you know, they were on... The pressure of filming the video can really get to people sometimes if you're not, like, getting tricks, and...
I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just one of those moments where I was like, wow, this is pretty funny.
This one is from Joe Castrucci.
Oh, yeah, cool.
So he said, in the early days of VX filming, did you ever get into any territorial fights with filmers over camera angle position? Did any escalate into violence? And follow up to that, could that happen today? If not, what has changed? The game, or has O'Mealy found peace?
You know what's funny is I don't remember ever getting into any beef with filmers over VX. Yeah, maybe he knows something that I can't remember, but I don't remember anything ever escalating to violence. But from the way he's framed the question, it sounds like something happened. But I mean, I've certainly found some peace as I've gotten older, that's without a doubt. But man, most of the filmers that I worked with, we all got along pretty much. If we ever had any beef, it wasn't over filming angles, not to my knowledge or memory.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sorry to have such a disappointing answer to the question.
That's okay.
But yeah, certainly never had any with Joe, that's for sure. We always got on fairly well, I think, and we did some miles together on some habitat and workshop trips, but I don't remember having any beef with filmers over VX angles, no. I mean, I know some other photographers did, but not me personally, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it must have changed quite a bit since your beginning in the early 90s till today. Like being on a session as the photographer, like the place you occupied kind of at the time versus now, because now everything is through video, through Instagram, YouTube.
Well,
and
certainly that's
everything.
interesting that you would say it that way, because I think two things changed. Like physically, the place where you are is changed because video cameras have changed. Like I think there was a time where it wasn't the VX1, but maybe it was the smaller Sony that people were using. That was like the lens is really wide, and they'd have to get in so close. And then that was one where it was like, oh, this is hard because you're really in the photo. Like, so photographers having to pull back because you'd have to either shoot a plate and Photoshop the guy out or whatever. But then in combination of that, the priorities changed of, it used to be that the videos were maybe secondary to the photo shoot because the magazines were kind of more prominent and people would be shooting things for the magazine, and the video was just kind of as a secondary. But, as videos became more popular and the internet caught on, the videographers became, the production values got high with people using generators and tripods and dollies and all that kind of video stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that was certainly, there was a pushback on photographers that they were sort of not the top priority anymore as far as like where they could,
stand
where they could place themselves.
Sure.
It's whether it's a rail or another spot. But I don't know, anyone that's sort of reasonable to work with, you could try and work that out. But
sure.
Photographers had to be more adaptive in terms of like learning how to Photoshop out filmers, like how to shoot a plate and like, or include the filmer in the shot if you thought it made it look interesting, or it just became, a big part of like what it is, where, I don't know, the photography that is appealing to me that I always found like exciting is, is more about like the unusualness of the spot or the trick. And so I think now the way skating is now is that, well, I should say a lot of the skating is now is there's probably less of that, like where a cool photo can just sort of speak for itself. It doesn't need the video translation as well. And I think some of my favorite photos, there never was any video footage of it, or sometimes that the footage maybe isn't quite as exciting as the photo, or vice versa. It can go both ways. But
sure.
I think it's something that you had to come to peace with, because it was one of those things that's just like a bit of a zeitgeist that's just moving, and you'd be fighting more if you tried to avoid it, I think, because the skater wants to do the trick, the skater wants the footage, the skater sponsors want the footage and the photos, so you just have to work out a way to like make it work and check all the boxes. But I mean, I'm certain that there's been incidences where skate photographers and skate filmers have bumped heads, and I'm sure there's probably a time where it has come to violence, just not for me personally.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joe. We were on tour once on I believe it was a Habitat tour, but it might have been a few mixed guys workshop and Habitat. And this wasn't any beef over filming or anything like that, but me and Bill Strobeck, we got into a wrestling match one night in a hotel.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and for years afterwards, my thumb would still pop out of the socket because...
Ow.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Me being rowdy and Australian, but Bill's a pretty... he's got a lot of moxie, I guess you would say. Anyway, we went at it for a while, and then it eventually stopped. But one of those things at horseplay, just fooling around, and then just maybe turned a bit serious. I don't know if that's what Joe's referring to, but it certainly wasn't over angle.
Yeah, it was like a side thing. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Bill's just kind of like, he's a bit of a hard nut, but he's, I would say we're good friends, regardless of that.
All right, have listened to this one.
Hello, boys. Hello, Mr. O'Mealy. It's your good buddy, Mark Oblow. I just wondered if you can remember back to 2007. I believe we went to Japan there. You went to the fish market. We did all kinds of different things. I was just wondering what would be one of your most memorable times from that tour, whether it was Omar shopping or Dylan's cigarettes or Arto Sari's drinking days. Anyway, hope you guys are good. Take it easy. Peace.
Yeah. That's cool, man. That was definitely a very memorable trip. I got a lot of good memories from that trip. It's interesting that he said the fish markets, because we were all excited. Like, there was probably, I think, almost everyone apart from, well, not everyone, but certainly Mark myself, Jason and Anders, Arto. There were a lot of photographers on that trip besides just me. Well, people interested in taking photos, and Japan's obviously a great place for doing that.
Oh, yeah.
So there was talk of going to the fish markets, and then when it came to, I don't know, it's long story short, I ended up going by myself.
Okay.
Because everyone else either had slept in, and I heard that the best time to go was like super early, like 4 o'clock in the morning. So I got up and went. And out of a very memorable trip, that's certainly one of the most memorable parts of it for me, because it was fantastic. I got up and walked around. It was huge. It was like probably 2 or 3 New York City blocks.
Oh, wow.
Exotic fish and huge different things, and it was cool. I had a good experience because I saw this guy and he looked Australian like me, and he had a polo shirt on, and it had South Australian tuna something whatever company, I forget the name of it, but it said South Australia.
Okay.
And I think he kind of saw me looking at it, and he saw my camera, and he's like, "Oh, what's going on?" I was like, "Oh, I'm just here on a skateboarding trip actually, and I'm just up early, wanted to come check it out." And he's like, "Oh, you know what's going on?" I was like, "Oh, I work for this skateboard magazine, but you know, I just like to take photos or whatever." He's like, "All right, you want to see something cool?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Just got to come in here, stay quiet, don't say anything to anyone, just, you know, make yourself invisible and just, you'll be fine." Mm-hmm. I'm like, "All right, what is this?" And there was this big roller door with like a crack, like maybe this wide in it, you know, like half a foot wide. And he pulls it back, and I just as, you know, probably 50 or 100 laid out on the floor of the massive bluefin tunas frozen. And it was the auction room. And all the guys are like haggling over the price and shouting at each other. It's super intense atmosphere. And usually, unless you're a part of the, you know, unless you're a buyer or a seller, you're not allowed in there for whatever reason. I don't know. And certainly, I guess you're not allowed to take photos in there. But this guy kind of just took me in as like, he's like, you know, yeah, just don't stay in there too long. You know, just try and be a fly on the wall. So I did. I probably stayed in there 5 minutes, not very long, but just enough to see it, and then got a few cool photos. And yeah, so that was something pretty memorable. And then ended up going to have like sashimi for breakfast at like 7 o'clock in the morning. I was exhausted by that time. And I think I even had a beer and some sashimi, and I was like, oh, this is pretty awesome, because I'd just seen all this exotic fish and taken a bunch of cool photos. And it was just really like one of those like severe culturally different experiences from what I'd ever seen. And I was a little hesitant at first to go by myself, but I'm really glad that I did. So.
Yeah. Must have been a fun experience, yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of other fun times. I remember going to a spa with Arto, and he was just waltzing in like this giant 6'4" Finnish Viking, and all these Japanese businessmen like, whoa, who's this guy? Like, and just every day was great on that trip. It was good, like good food. As Mark said, like Omar just buying all these random trinkets and laying them out on his bed. I have a pretty funny picture of that, and I think he bought like a long head wig as part of that.
Okay,
and. Dylan skating really well on that trip. Stefan, John Goman, I think. Yeah, it was a good trip. We had a good time. And Oblow just keeping the vibes high, as always. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But definitely the fish market was the standout from that one, for sure.
All right, let's do this one.
Mike O'Mealy, what is your favorite thing to do besides photography? Mike, what does it mean when you say, sweet as, mate? Mike, what was it like boxing? What was the best part about boxing? I know you were a boxer because I stayed at your apartment.
That's it. Did you recognize who that was?
No, I can't recognize, almost, but I can't put my finger on it.
That's Tobin Yelland.
Oh, yeah, okay, I can see that now. Yeah, it sounded a little compressed or something.
Yeah.
So what do I like to do?
So your favorite things to do besides photography was the first question.
Yeah. Well, right now, lately, probably for the last year or two, is fishing. I've been going fishing a lot.
Okay.
Fortunate enough to live close by a pretty good spot on Sydney Harbour. So, yeah, that's probably my favourite thing at the moment. That or probably just barbecuing, like classic.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I definitely enjoy those two things. And I got into cycling for a little while too. It's been good just to try and stay fit, but haven't been doing it enough lately. But definitely fishing is my favourite thing lately. I mean, I'm starting to figure some things out, getting better at it, and eaten a few of them. Fishing and then barbecuing a fish.
Perfect combo. Right there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a combo. Sweet as just means everything's all right, or it's good, it's cool.
Okay.
Sweet as, yeah. Sweet as a nut, sweet as a feather, some people say.
Okay.
Which is an oxymoron, because why would you eat and taste a feather?
Yeah.
Sweet as, it just means everything's cool. Everything's good.
Okay.
Yeah, and the last part of the question...
The boxing, yeah.
What was my favorite part of boxing?
Yeah.
And there's many things to it. Like, to actually do it, I was never really great at it, but it was just to learn something that, I knew nothing about to begin with. I kind of got into boxing when I lived in New York because a bunch of friends would gather around and there'd be like really good Friday night fights, like big fights on HBO, and you would all go around to one person would rent it and everyone would chip in like $5 or $10, have a bunch of beers and order some pizzas. And I saw some really big name fights in the first couple of years that I lived in New York. And like, obviously, the more I watched it, the more, I just sort of, I wouldn't say I was a big fighter growing up, but I could appreciate the skill in it, I guess, from the beginning.
Okay.
And then I started trying to train a little bit once I moved to LA, just because I was in the car so much and I just wanted to try and get some exercise. And once I started doing it and I realized how hard it is and just how fit you have to be and how skillful it is to be good at it. And then just learning about the different styles and the different techniques and just, as much as you think it's just punching people in the head, to have the smarts of how to I just found the whole aspect of it interesting.
Yeah.
It's something that I'm still fascinated by today. I still watch fights. I don't really box myself as much anymore or ever really, but
you keep an eye on what's going on.
Yeah, if there's a good fight. I actually went to a fight a couple of months, or probably a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Here in Sydney, and I also made a book when I lived in LA about amateur boxing, so that was pretty cool. I think it's just something that's like skating. It just requires like determination and physical prowess and skill and fitness, and there's elements of style in it. I think there's a quote from Charles Bukowski that I'm not a big Bukowski reader. I'm not even sure if it's him that this is attributed to, but I think it is. But I think style is the answer to everything. A fresh way to approach a dull or dangerous thing. To do a dull thing with style is preferable to doing a dangerous thing without it.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So,
Bukowski then?
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe that's not the quote I'm after. But anyway, I just thought that there were so many aspects about it that I found similar to skating in the, it's very, very solitary. The training part of it, it's just you by yourself. And
Sure.
yeah, there was many things that I liked about it. I still find it fascinating. So, and just the doing it myself, even the littlest improvement when you found you started getting the rhythm better or the timing better or technique better or feeling a bit more powerful and just that sense of accomplishment.
Yeah. And have you shot a lot of boxing, like for example, a boxing match? Like I assume it must be quite tricky because of the timing. Yeah,
it is. I mean, it's certainly a lot harder than skateboarding, I think.
Is it? Okay.
Well, there's aspects of it that it's unpredictable where they're going to be, and it's a whole different way of shooting. To skating, you sort of have a set frame, and if you know anything about skating, the guy's going to come this way, he's going to be in the air here, so it's a little bit more predictable. But
right.
Boxing is, it's all over the place. If a guy's working on a bag and he's training, then it's a little bit different. But during a fight itself, it's like, oh man, I'm so impressed by photographers that can get, a really memorable, iconic photo of a fight because it's impossible.
Yeah.
Well, not impossible, but I found it really challenging. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that was part of what I found interesting about it too. When I during the time that I was shooting it a lot, before I knew I was making the book, I was just shooting it because I wanted to shoot it, and I was shooting amateurs, Golden Gloves and stuff in LA, and shooting a lot of fights. And if I could get one good shot out of shooting 6 or 7 fights, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah.
Just because it's hard to the timing where they are and how to frame it. Yeah, it's not easy for sure.
Let's see. This is kind of a joint question because these guys asked some very similar questions. They're from Thomas Campbell and Ed Templeton.
Okay.
So I'll just read you the 2 questions. So Thomas asked, who is your favorite photographer outside of skateboarding and inside of skateboarding? Explain why. And hope you're good, bud. So that's Thomas. And Ed asked, who is your favorite non-skater photographer? Mm-hmm. So basically just a non-skater for Ed. But yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, to answer both of those questions, I don't really have one singular favorite photographer outside of skating. I have many.
Yeah, definitely.
There are many that I enjoy looking at their work. From here in Australia, Trent Park, but I love a lot of the Magnum photographers, Cartier-Bresson, Robert Capa, Sebastião Salgado, not a Magnum photographer, but Danny Lyon, Danny Clinch, Gary Winogrand, Richard Avedon. There's lots.
Yeah.
I have a lot of inspirations and influences outside of photography. Irving Penn, Albert Watson, lots. And inside of skateboarding, certainly I have a few as well, but probably one of my biggest inspirations was Daniel Harold Sturt. Certainly when I was very young and when I was starting, his photos had a really big...
impact?
Left a big impression on me.
Yeah.
I had a little sort of not an office, but just part of my room, and I had particularly a selection of his photos cut out of the magazine and stuck on my wall. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just found them to be really, exciting, dangerous, mysterious. I couldn't really understand why I liked them, and that's what I liked about them, is that they just had something that I couldn't put my finger on what it was. I mean, obviously once I learnt more about photography, I could understand
analyze it a bit more.
On the first impression they were just so striking, and that's kind of what influenced me to want to pick up a camera. But having said that, also Tobin Yelland's photos, Gabe Morford's photos, Spike Jones's photos, Thomas Campbell's photos, Grant Brittain's photos, Rick Kosick.
Oh yeah.
Just a lot of the guys, anyone sort of pre-94.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that was in the that's kind of really my time where that's how I was learning, was looking at the magazines and studying them and trying to emulate them, and just feeling like, I didn't ever think that would be a part of my world. I was just a kid down in Australia just trying to shoot photos of my own friends skating and just trying to make them look as good as I could, so those guys were another world away to me. So it's quite funny that I've ended up meeting a lot of them, and yeah,
and they're your peers. Like you've made a place for yourself among. You're definitely up there with them.
So certainly any of those guys that I've just listed. Yeah, I hope you're good too, Thomas and Ed. both awesome guys. Yeah.
Ed added a little thing. He said, "I thought you might answer Burke Uzzle." I'm not sure if I'm saying that right.
Yeah, no.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. When we were on a toy machine trip in Barcelona in around 2004, I think, maybe 2005, something like that. Anyway, he came across this, Ed's a big collector of photography books, and he came across this book of photos by Burke Uzzle, Burkuzzzle.
Right.
And it just became one of those funny things that we kept saying his name because he had just such a unique and kind of funny sounding name.
Yeah.
And also amazing pictures from what I remember. And Ed would just look over at me in the middle of silence and just say, Burke Uzzle. But he was trying to say it with an Australian accent as well. So just another one of those tour madness things where you're just, probably spending too many hours in a van with the same people, and the smallest things
make you laugh.
Burke Uzzle. Yeah.
Okay, this one is from Brad Saunders. I hope I'm saying his name right.
Okay, yeah.
Let's see, he said, after being in the game for so long, do you prefer to shoot a photo and they land it within the first few tries, a sort of in and out type of deal, where it's just straight business, or would you prefer to be there through the process, potentially multiple visits, but be a part of the process each step of the way to eventually getting the trick and picture?
That's a good question. That's interesting. I will frame my answer by saying the first time I met Brad, we went to this rail in downtown LA.
I don't think he told me about this, but someone else suggested that I reach out to him and told me about this.
And he did this
the
crazy
rail, right?
Yeah, the Didac rail, exactly. And he backsmithed it, I think, second or third try, maybe third or fourth try.
Wow.
Quick. And yeah, it was sort of like amazing, obviously, to see something like that go down. With the security guard there as well, trying to kick him out. So that's how I met Brad. But what's funny is I would take either, because when you see something like that, it's obviously very exciting. When somebody lands something first try, it's always nerve-wracking, because then you're like, oh man, did I? It's oftentimes for me, it takes a little bit of, I have been doing it a long time, but sometimes you like to get to a spot and think,
try a few different
you want to try a few different things, or you just get the feel for it as the guys it doesn't always come to me straight away. I'm going to shoot it from here, or maybe the guy's just warming up. And so being part of the process, I think, is fine. I have no problem with that at all. In fact, it's great. Do I want to go back to a trick second, third, or fourth time? Not always, no. I mean, I don't know if that's from being in the game too long or not anything to do with that, but it's just, I think more for the skater certainly, like, I don't mind watching a guy battle for a trick or, you know, try his hardest. And, you know, that's part of the enjoyment of it, is watching somebody do something difficult and then coming out on top.
Yeah.
Like, that's certainly part of it. But I don't know, man. I think the very nature of skating is how unpredictable it can be is what I still like about it. I think if it was sort of, if I knew it was going to be one way or the other, that would be the most boring thing.
Yeah.
To me, like if I know this guy's going to battle for the trick and I'm going to be going back 3 days, that's already going to spoil it for me. If I know a guy's going to go there and land it first try, then that's kind of going to spoil it for me, because to know the outcome is what makes it less appealing for me.
Yeah.
I would happily do either, as long as I am still surprised by the result, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it.
Yeah, sure.
And, you know, if a guy's struggling to get something hard and then, you know, you can see that there is, you know, he's got it in him to make it, well, then absolutely, then I'm not going to... Part of getting a good photo and also being a good skate photographer is you want to be someone that's encouraging to that person, to make them think, you know, help them believe that they can do it, I guess.
Yeah.
That's, or at least for me, it's always been the relationship between the skater and the photographer, is you're working on this thing together. It's not something where you just come in and like, oh, well, okay, you didn't make it, so I'm going to leave. And you have, like, the way it was for me is it's never the case that you have no emotional connection to the situation. You're invested in it, whether it's purely for the trick or, you know, the guy's an amateur and you think he's a nice kid and you want to see him do well and get sponsored and go on. There's always some element, or if it's a pro and you're like, oh, he's got a shoe coming out and I'd really like to see him do well, whatever. There's levels to it that I think it's never as simple as just like knowing how the session's going to go, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and if I did know, then I think that would be the most
it wouldn't be
thing.
exciting.
Yeah. So I'd happily watch somebody battle for something. I don't mind. If it's getting to a week, then maybe that's a little bit long. Maybe they should walk away at that point. Yeah.
I was wondering if you ever got to a session with a skater and he's trying a trick. For example, one that comes to mind for me, I was reading yesterday this interview you did with Farron Golding for on AIDS photos that you shot. And there's this photo where he does a front blunt on a curved kind of bench or something, and you're on top of a structure of some kind with like a little glass structure around the bench. Anyways, you shot this from way above, and it's an interesting angle and everything. And I was wondering, not specifically for that photo, but just in general, if, for example, you get to this session, you decide to shoot it from there. Has there ever been instances where the skater is like, well, no, I'd rather you shot it maybe somewhere else. I don't think this is a good place to shoot it from. Or I assume in the case of Anthony, for example, he's shot long enough with you, you know, that he trusts you. I'm sure he trusts your judgment, and if you decide to shoot it from there on top of the thing, he's going to trust it's going to make a good photo or something, you know. But especially, for example, with a skater that you're shooting your first photo with, you know, have you ever, you know, kind of butted heads with people who are not really trusting what you want to do with it?
Yeah, I can't remember nothing springs to mind where that's happened. I don't really recall it ever being a serious problem. Because,
usually they trust you. They're like, you think this is good.
I've never really had something... if anything, it's probably happened more with somebody that I've known for a long time.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
They might have said, I'm not sure about that, but I don't remember ever anyone really questioning my judgment about what looks good or what doesn't look good.
Yeah, okay.
And nowadays, just referring back to what we were saying before, there's so much for skaters to consider the footage-wise as well, like for the video angle, that I think maybe the photographer's choice is like maybe less on the skater's mind than it used to be nowadays. I don't know. But I can't recall any incidents where somebody was really doubtful of what I was doing. Yeah.
Okay.
If anything, that whatever doubts they have would not compare to any doubts I'm having on my own anyway already. So
okay.
That's part of the madness of it, I think. Sometimes you know, and you're sort of confident that you're in the right spot because you can feel it in the film days, or you can on the digital camera you can see like, all right, that looks fine. But I think learning to shoot before the digital era, you just sort of had to have that confidence in yourself to enable not only yourself to keep doing, but for the skaters to trust you that, okay, he knows what he's doing. Then they can just focus on the skating, and they're not having to worry about like, oh, what's he doing? Where's he shooting from? Because I did have some experiences in the very, very beginning where I was unsure of what I was doing, and it was off-putting to the skater. And actually it was Andrew Curry, and I was trying to. It wasn't like a super duper gnarly trick, but quite a good trick. And I was trying to figure out. I was fussing around with my flashes or my angle or something, and he kind of barked at me like, what are you doing? Make up your mind, get your shit together. And ever that really made an impression on me to like not be a disruption to the skater. So
not distract him, and
not distracting, and not just sort of be sort of confident in that what you're doing was the best spot. And even though I will say sometimes there's been times where I'm shooting, I'm like, I'm not sure if this, you have your own self-doubts about it, but I just remember that if somebody's trying something difficult, you want to be in the back of their thoughts. You don't want to be in the front of their thoughts about, what's he doing with the angle, or I don't know, I don't like what he's doing.
Yeah, definitely.
That's just something that I learnt very early, just to try not to be try and be part of the solution.
Yeah.
And you want to give them that confidence that you're in a good spot, the photo's going to look good, that whatever risk they're putting themselves in is going to be worth it for the end result. And it's all part of the psychology,
Yeah.
A lot of people don't speak too much about that. It's a lot about but I think looking back on it, that was certainly that aspect of it is a big part of it for me, is that making the skaters feel comfortable in what they were doing, but also in what you were doing. And whether that's through words of encouragement or reinforcement or whatever, just being like positive reinforcement. So that was kind of a big part of what I sort of brought to the table, I guess. I would hope. Good question from Brad. Hope he's doing well.
All right. So the two next questions are kind of linked together, but I'll have you listen to the first one. And then the second question from the other guy is kind of the continuation of it. You'll see. You'll understand.
Hey, Michael. Please tell us about shooting for the Spike Jonze movie in Australia. Thank you. We'll be happy to hear about it.
Did you recognize who that was?
No. I've got a guess, but I can't put my finger on it.
Fred Mortagne, French Fred.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. He doesn't sound like himself. So I got to shoot probably about maybe a week's worth of days on set.
Where the Wild Things Are?
Yeah, Where the Wild Things Are, the movie. And
that must have been awesome. Yeah, I mean, what a cool experience.
Yeah, it was very cool. It was down mostly on a sand dune, the days that I got to shoot. Couple of days on a sand dune and a few other days in basically sort of a rocky kind of small mountain range area called the Grampians. So it was down in Victoria, outside of Melbourne, maybe 4 hours outside of Melbourne.
What year did you
this is in 2006 in December for about a week.
Oh, wow, okay. I didn't realize it was that long ago. I thought it would have been maybe early 2010s or something. Okay.
Well, the movie didn't come out till maybe 2010, I think, much later. Yeah, or maybe 2009, I forget exactly. But the way that came about is my wife, just girlfriend at the time, her two roommates, both girls, both their boyfriends were working on the film. So one roommate's boyfriend was the assistant director, and the other roommate's boyfriend was, I'm not exactly sure what his role was, but they were both working on it.
Okay.
Anyway, I had heard that they were shooting it down in Australia, and obviously I knew Rick Howard and Mike Harrell and those guys a little bit because I'd been on a few tours with them by that stage.
Did you know already Spike Jonze at this point? Had you crossed paths?
Well, that's the thing. I had met Spike Jonze through Aaron Meza and Rick and Mike, but only very briefly. Just, hello, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. Had not really spent any great deal of time with the guy.
Okay.
Just maybe ran into him at Girl once or twice and somewhere else. Maybe out on a session, I think. But I wouldn't say I knew him at all.
Yeah.
Other than just had met him briefly. And so the two boyfriends of my wife's roommates were working on the film down in Victoria, and I was in Sydney at the time. Anyway, I sort of got in touch with Rick and those guys. I was like, hey, look, I had heard sort of a bunch of different photographers had been coming out to shoot stills on set. So I sort of thought, that might be really interesting to do that. And basically, I think my wife's roommates had said, hey, maybe Mike might be interested in coming down. So it was because of that I sort of found out that they were inviting people to come and shoot. So I essentially kind of not invited myself, but I got a hold of Megan Baltimore, who's obviously partners in Girl with
Close
Rick
with Spike.
and Mike and Spike. And I was like, hey, look, I'm around in Australia. I'd love to come down. And basically I just wrote an email and they forwarded on to him, and it was as simple as that. And he said, yeah, I'd love to come down are you free on these days? Because they had a gap there was nobody shooting in that particular week. So it was as easy as that. And then it was cool. I went to go down there, and it was really cool because it was just out in the middle of these sand dunes, and they had these actors that were in these enormous costumes playing the monsters.
Yeah. And
I think the very first day that I shot a photo of this guy who I'm still friends with to this day. His name's Sebastian Dickens. He's like a stunt actor in Australia, and he was tumbling down this sand dune in the monsters costume. And keep in mind, this is in December in Australia, so it was
very warm.
very hot.
Yeah,
hot. And so I met this guy, and he was cool. And there was also the onset, the sort of the permanent onset photographer who was shooting the whole movie, another Australian guy called Matt Netheim, and he had shot a lot of other movies, and he was a really gracious guy. No sort of competitive vibes for me being there or anything like that, just very welcoming. And we would sit at the end of each day, and I'd only just started shooting a little bit of digital at that stage, but I was mostly shooting film while I was there.
Wow, okay.
On set. But so at the end of the day, we would sit and just have a beer, and we were just, it was just cool. Just a cool guy, showed me lots of other films that he worked on. And then I always tell people it was really cool seeing Spike on set because he was just like a big skate rat.
Oh, yeah?
Sort of his sort of persona around all this like Hollywood sort of producers and the big cameras, and he was just like, oh, let's try this. And he's very spontaneous, and it was just cool to see him in his element, sort of how to get the sort of the performances out of the actors. And yeah, it was interesting because it was all sort of physical performance, and then they would dub the dialogue over later.
Oh, okay.
For the at least the week that I was there wasn't too much. It was mostly just physical scenes with the actors in the suits.
Okay.
So yeah, it was just cool. And then I ended up getting to shoot a portrait of Spike with one of the monsters. It was probably like 9 feet tall, and
oh wow.
Yeah, he was cool. He was just sort of a really energetic, playful guy, and he got the actor kid that was playing Max, and I think he put him in a headlock, and yeah, it was good. Like shooting stills on a film set, you sort of got to, again, stay quiet, keep out of the way, and you're not really you have to sort of capture what's going on, and there's not a lot of time for set shots, but Spike was really cool. He sort of made time for me for a quick portrait, and then I got one really good shot of him directing where he's standing on an apple box and the monster's getting pushed off the edge of a sand dune, and yeah, it was good. I would say it was a really good experience. I've since done some more on-set photography for different TV shows and a couple of films, and yeah, it's good. I kind of like the experience of you just kind of got to disappear in the background and catch little behind-the-scenes moments. So that's something I learnt being there, I guess, and yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it.
I'll have a listen to this other question because, as I said, it's linked to Fred's question. All right.
Hello, Mike. So I've been asked to submit a surprise question for your podcast interview. I don't know if I'd really consider this a surprise question, but I always wondered about your work on Spike Jonze's adaptation of Where the Wild Things Are, and whether your experience as a skateboarding photographer informed your approach on shooting Where the Wild Things Are, and vice versa. Did you sort of take away anything from working on that film and then apply that to your skateboarding photography?
That was Cameron Sparks.
Oh, is it? Okay. That's a great question. I certainly approached it with the eyes of a skate photographer. I mean, how could you not?
Yeah.
How could I not? And certainly the first day I was there with that stunt going on, the guy was like tumbling down in the air for a minute, tumbling down this sand dune. So the way I shot it, for sure, I tried to, capture the energy and the action of a skate photo. And there are a few other opportunities like that during the course of what I was doing. But I think probably everything I've shot that's not skateboarding, I try and incorporate the things I've learned from shooting skateboarding into that. I think it's sort of hard not to. It's just the way that I see things.
Sure.
But the interesting part of that question is, did I take anything from that and incorporate it into skate photography? I'm not sure. I'm sure subconsciously I must have. Just certainly maybe trying to make things more cinematic and include elements of the scenery. But I mean, those are things I was trying to do already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's something I would be interested to. I'd have to look at some other things and see how that had influenced me, I think. But certainly the two informed each other, absolutely.
Yeah.
I couldn't say how the on-set movie stills influenced the skate photography, but maybe letting things breathe a little bit more, possibly, as far as like composition and framing. Maybe that was due to the fact I was down in this massive sand dune and there's just so much space, and maybe that certainly had some influence on the way I shot skate photography after that. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Very subconscious if it was, for sure, but I mean, that's the best way, I think.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah.
Great
I thought
question.
it was an interesting one.
Yeah.
And this is just for me, but I was just curious if you had you mentioned that you had an opportunity to shoot Spike and hang out with him a little bit, but I assume he must have been extremely busy on the set, of course.
Oh yeah, it was literally at like 5 minutes at the end of it. I had this shot that I had set up with one of the big monsters, and the light was super good, and I had some lighting, and I wanted to get the main actor kid in there, but because the kid he wasn't yet of working legal age, the child services officer was there.
Okay.
And the second the clock struck 5 o'clock or whatever it was, they rushed him off, and because legally he's not allowed to work
be on the set
more
anymore.
than a certain number of hours. Anyway, the guy that was the child services officer on set was this really just like, I don't know, kind of took his job a bit too seriously, and like I literally only needed the guy for a couple of minutes, but he was kind of making a big stink about it. He didn't want me to do a photo, and I was look, I'd been waiting around sort of 4 days. I was like, I just want to get this one shot, and for whatever persuasion I was trying to like produce, the guy wasn't having it. But anyway, Spike essentially saw this going on and kind of came in,
grabbed the kid and
and he was like, no, it's fine, let's take a photo. And he's like, I shot maybe a roll, maybe 2 rolls, a roll and a half. He's like, you good? He wanted to make sure I got what I wanted, and obviously it was stressful because I've been waiting around all day shooting, but also there's a lot of waiting around.
Sure.
And he's obviously very busy, a lot of people wanting to talk to him, like that, rehearsing with the actors, talking to the producer about like the budget and whether they're going over, but so it was I didn't want to encroach on him to ask too much of his time. So it was a nice surprise when he saw that I was sort of struggling I wanted to at least get something to take away that was something that I had sort of envisioned, rather than just shooting
He helped you make it happen.
They played out. Yeah, and he helped me make it happen, exactly. He jumped in, and it was cool. I got a great picture of him with the kid, with him and the monster, and yeah, it was cool. Yeah, so that was nice. And he was just very enthusiastic. Yeah, so that was good.
We were talking earlier about like your early influences, and I read that Spike Jonze was one of them among the other ones, like Daniel Harold Sturt and everybody. But and I was wondering if you had an opportunity at some point, maybe probably not at that time, but to just sit down with him and talk about skate photography. But
oh, unfortunately, no, I never did. I don't know if I might be too. I don't know if intimidated is the wrong word, but yeah, I don't know. It's sort of a funny thing. Like I would just be too awestruck to sort of
sure.
I don't know. It's like I almost like not knowing is almost better for me. I wouldn't want to ask him how he did at certain things or anything like that. I'd just rather enjoy them.
Keep it like you've always seen it, and
yeah, exactly. I don't really want to peel back the surface too, and just out of respect for him as an artist, a photographer. It's I don't know. That's just me. Yeah.
So let's see. This is not really a question. It's just a shout out, kind of, from Josh Kalis.
Okay.
He just said, "Tell the Aussie he's got amazing eyes." That's it.
Yeah.
But I was curious if you had any stories maybe you could share from shooting with Josh over the years.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. You got in touch with him because he's another one that just by pure chance or luck or timing or whatever. When I first moved to New York, for whatever reason, I was taking the bus down to Philly a lot. I used to get the $10 Fenghua bus from Chinatown to Philly. Yeah. And just because there were a few guys to shoot with in New York, but there was probably just as many or more down in Philly. So just to kind of keep myself busy, I would found myself going to Philly a lot. And I'd met Josh briefly in Australia, maybe in the mid-90s, 95 or 96, he came out to Australia.
Yep.
So we knew each other, but not very well. But I remember there was a couple of different times. Slap wanted me to shoot an interview with him, I think, because I had a handful of good photos. And usually that's kind of how those things started back then. You would send a few things in and the magazine would be like, oh, you know, why don't you get a couple more and we'll make something out of it.
Yeah.
So I was getting a few good things with Josh, and we drove up to all the way to Michigan together from New York. I think actually he came and picked me up. So I went to see, because he was living back and forth between Philly and Michigan.
Okay.
And yeah, so that was cool. We drove all the way up. And then another time I remember being at Love Park and he wanted to kickflip the trash can. This is before the
tray flip?
Before the 360 flip, I think. Mm-hmm. But I remember him being, I was still like the newcomer in town kind of thing. And I remember him being on the phone and he was trying to get a hold of Ryan G. And he wasn't answering, or he wasn't in town, or for some reason he couldn't get a hold of him. He's like, yo, G, get your fat ass down here. I'm going to shoot this kickflip with O'Mealy. And I just remember feeling so bad because I was like, man, I would hate if I was like supposed to shoot something and I was like, man, I didn't want to like
step on anybody's toes. Yeah.
I didn't want to step on anyone's toes. That's not my style at all.
Yeah.
Because I was, not only am I an out of towner, I'm also a foreigner. And I just didn't want to get a reputation for being like, anyway.
Yeah,
so
sure.
G eventually, I think, called back and said, oh, it's fine. Like he couldn't make it for whatever reason. He said it was fine.
Okay.
So I shot the photo with Kalis and they ended up using it for a slap cover. And I think he was pretty happy with it. The photo was good. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of just had a good relationship ever since. I didn't shoot tons of things with him, but he was always cool. Like he was, I always had a good time with Josh, definitely. I think I stayed at his house in Philly a few times after that. Yeah, what up, Josh?
Cool. This next one is from Barbee Puleo, whom I know you've shot many, many photos with.
Yep.
All right, so he said, what is the gnarliest and or most impressive thing you've seen done on a skateboard?
That's a good question.
I'm sure there's plenty, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the most gnarly. One of the most gnarliest things that springs to mind, just because it was sort of frightening, is I shot a sequence of Grant Taylor dropping in on this dam in Canberra, Australia. But it was like quite a large flat bank, like a spillway. But then when you ride out, there's these basically giant cement flat banks, but facing the opposite direction. And they're placed at about maybe 8 to 10 feet apart with a gap in between. And the gap's probably 6 to 8 feet wide, not very wide, maybe 8 to 10 feet wide.
Okay.
So anyway, we come to this dam and we sort of went there to skate the flat banks. They're quite nice flat banks because they got a little smooth transition at the bottom and then they go up and they're sort of shaped like almost like a skate park flat bank.
Okay.
And they're only sort of probably 8 to 10 feet wide. Anyway, so there's a whole bunch of these at the bottom of the dam, and they're basically to stop logs, I think, if the dam floods, and they're to catch any debris so it won't. So, these are pretty big structures.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're at this dam, and we went there to sort of skate the flat banks, but Grant had sort of walked up to the very top of the spillway, and it's probably, I don't know, maybe 100 feet up, I'm just guessing right now, but big enough where you drop in on it, you're going to be absolutely flying when you come down. And it's just one of those things where if you would have got the speed wobbles, or you hit a rock, or you made it down the bank and then you didn't keep a straight line, you would basically you'd be hitting a cement wall. And so he just went down and threaded the needle. But the reason it was gnarly because he was just sort of walking around up there, and we thought, I was at the other side of the dam, like quite far away with like a long lens. Mm-hmm. And he sort of went up there like, maybe sort of saying he was going to try it, but he didn't really say like, hey, get ready, I'm going to sort of do it. And I was just kind of watching him through my camera. And then it wasn't anything, he didn't sort of say, hey, you guys ready? Like, I'm going to go. He just we were watching him, and then he just suddenly stepped on his board.
Oh, wow.
And just did it.
Holy
and
shit.
it was long enough where it was like for him to go down was maybe 4 or 5 or 6 frames on the sequence, so it was like a good like tick 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 tick, like, so I was watching him go, like shooting it like and it was not anything anyone had ever done before, so I was just like, oh man, I was kind of shooting it just like like thinking, I hope he doesn't hit a rock or speed wobble or die. And then just whoosh, he just shot through the gap. And for that split second, you couldn't see him because he was, the pylons the flat banks are paced out. And that was certainly one thing that springs to mind where I was like feeling a little bit in my stomach, I'm going to see something horrible right now. But obviously, if anyone can do it, he can. I just remember genuinely being a little bit frightened of just like, whoa, this is gnarly. Because I think it was a combination of what the physical layout of the place was, but also the fact that he just sort of did it.
Yeah, like he didn't
spontaneously.
He didn't make sure that you were ready that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, and I'm glad I was ready, but I think that made it seem gnarlier because he looked like he was just talking to someone and he wasn't really even getting himself ready to do it. He just kind of jumped on it and like just went for it, and that sort of made it extra kind of extra exciting. And then the other question was what impressive?
Yeah.
Well, there's been lots of things. I mean, certainly when Shane Cross nose grinded the El Toro rail first try, that was impressive as well as gnarly.
First try.
And then I guess Bob Burnquist doing the loop, both the loop without the runway and the loop with the gap in the top. Those are both gnarly.
Oh, that's right. Didn't he do that switch as well or something?
Yeah, he did that switch. Those are some things where it just like they're sort of feats of like stunts. But I'm just trying to think. There's been other things too where just people bombing certain hills that maybe I didn't photograph or I don't know. They're all pretty like they're not unimpressive, but I just feel like for me they're a bit like. Everybody's seen those, and I've talked about them before.
Yeah. No,
I know for sure there's been other gnarly stuff, but I'm just trying to think. I mean, watching Anthony Van Engelen skate in person is always gnarly and impressive, just because he's
fast,
powerful.
And
yeah, and always a little bit on edge, kind of as well. Like, and there's so many. I don't know. But there's also I'm trying to think of ones that particularly like my brain's just trying to catalog through everything and. Yeah, watching Eric Costin skate, that was always impressive. Just the board control and, commitment. And I think sometimes a little bit underestimated of a gnarly skater. I think always people think of him as, like, technically proficient and he's got that. But I've seen him, watching him skate this hubber in Philly one time, that one ended up being the cover of Skateboarder. That was pretty impressive.
Is it the one he back 5-0'd and back lips?
Back 5-0'd and back lip and a 180 nose grind. But
I remember.
That was really impressive. And watching Dylan Reeder skate in person, actually, that was always impressive. Yeah, just because he was just very skillful and light-footed and...
Sorry to cut you off, but in that little pocket of time between Minefield and the Gravis part, he was at his peak, and it was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's always impressive to watch, and I'm just trying to think who else. Yeah, lots. I don't know.
What about like Keith Hufnagel? Did you shoot some?
Of course.
Because like he was early on when you arrived in New York and everything.
Of course. I mean, I was actually just about to mention that before. Watching him just skate through the city and just blasting over hydrants and, obviously going to spots and watching him do things was impressive. But I also just liked just watching him just navigate through the city. That to me is one of my most favorite memories of living in New York, of just following him around, really.
Yeah.
Just popping over things and, that's impressive.
Keith in his natural habitat and,
and just not even trying to do tricks, just kind of like...
Yeah, cruising.
Like a shark, really. He was just a powerful creature, really. Mm-hmm. That's probably, obviously the skills and, all the tricks and the tray flips and the big ollies and everything. But just everyone goes on about Gino's push. But I think Keith's was one of my favourite, just because he was so leant over and just so committed. And I don't know, it's funny. Kyle Leaper once said to me that I'll never forget. He's like, we were driving around in LA and, he would always notice like how people, there's thousands of people driving, but he said to me once, he's like, you can tell a lot about a person's personality by the way they drive their car. Like whether they're really kicked back in the seat with the seat tip back, or they're like hunched up like an old lady, or do they grip the wheel tight? And like that's something that I always remembered, but I think it kind of, you can apply it to like how somebody skates too and how they push.
Sure.
And like,
Definitely.
What are their intentions? Are they cruising or like, and like Keith, I thought always had just something about his push that was just so so astounding to me, like forceful but like graceful but like relaxed but also aggressive and I don't know.
Yeah. No, very true. I mean, I've never seen it in person, but I can imagine.
Yeah, and I think again this comes back to like it's like some of my first day I ever was in New York City. I was on a Zero tour with like Wade Burkett and Jamie Thomas and a couple other guys.
Okay.
But I met up with Keith because I had got his phone number when he was in Australia like a year or two previously. And he met up with us to show us around. And I have a picture of him getting towed by a taxi down Broadway. It's still one of my favorite pictures. But just that day, watching him push to places and like, you know, it just left a really lasting impression on me. And like, yeah, just how in command he was of the streets, basically. And to, you know, like when you haven't seen that, when you come from Australia and you haven't seen that kind of like traffic, and then you see somebody just navigating through it without a care, like not scared. It's so confident and powerful, and I was just like, wow, it was so impressive to me.
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
And it just left a really strong impression on me. Absolutely.
And just to wrap it up with Barbee, I was wondering if you could tell us, because when I did his interview, he mentioned, and you sent me, and thanks again for the deer photo, you know, the dead deer photo with Tino Razzo. I was wondering if you remembered, you know, shooting that photo and like what was your take kind of on that day and that encounter?
Yeah, well, again, that was just another day of exploring with Barbee. Like my time with Barbee was filled with like just a lot of exploring and like, you know, I don't want to say lapse is the wrong word, but like just pushing and just going places, looking for things. And he would always know of something in a certain area, but he was never worried to be like, let's just skate down this way and see what we can, like he didn't think anything was going to be a waste of time, I guess, is the way, you know?
Yeah.
Some guys were more like, oh, I don't want to go there, there's nothing there. He had a very sort of open outlook on,
like, let's go with the flow, kind of. And
yeah, exactly. And we just ended up places. And that visit to the tunnel was just another day of, like, we were just out and about, like, hey, let's go check this out. And I think the reason we went there is that he had done a piece in there. And he's like, hey, would you come take a photo of it? And I was like, yeah, for sure. Like, I would love to go see that. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing of finding the deer, that just happened, like, being in there. But, you know, it was creepy.
Yeah.
You're in this dark tunnel, and, like, it was kind of... I'm glad I got the photo of the big piece that he did, because it was like pitch black in there, so I'm happy that I actually got a good picture of that. But yeah, that was just one of many hundreds of days of just like exploring around. I mean, that was a great way for me to learn
discover New York City,
discover the city, because with, you know, on Bobby's coattails, basically, because he was already quite an accomplished skater in terms of, like, you know, regular spots and regular tricks, and, like, you know, he could do all the sort of pro level tricks. But I think for me it was nice because I kind of met up with him in a time that he was really starting to come into his own
approach of things, and
coming to his own approach, exactly, of like, oh, I'm looking for things that are a bit different, or, you know, I don't think he was right at the peak of that, but I remember just some of the early photos I got of him he was skating on things that were unusual and just finding them to begin with.
Yeah.
And, you know, because a lot of skaters were just like, oh, it's New York, I'll go to the banks, I'll go to the pyramid ledges. And they're great spots, but, you know, everyone's seen them, you know. And, like, I was finding myself out in areas of, like, Sunset Park in Brooklyn, and, like, I had no idea where I was.
Yeah.
So, and, like, had he had left me, I would probably struggle to get back to my house again, like, that type of thing, you know. But that's what made it exciting, and it was cool. And, like, you know, we within a short 1 to 2 year period, like, there was... definitely, you know, you could count on two hands the number of photos which are still to this day, I think, hold up as like, wow, that is an interesting spot. How's he skating, you know? Mm-hmm. And just to answer your question about something that's gnarly or impressive, like, I wouldn't place Barbee in that category of, like, you know, terrifying, but it was always impressive to watch him skate.
Sure, yeah.
Because he had a whole different knack of being able to make things skatable that weren't, I don't know, a lot of them I would be like, oh, how you know, it was... impressive to me that he could, you know, make something out of those things. Like, there's one photo I shot where he's oiling off a wedge. It's out in Brooklyn by the Naval Yard somewhere. And man, he's like really high in there. And this thing was hard. I could barely roll up it. And he was like
blasting.
Had the quickness to like, blasting. And, you know, it's just, I always say it's just an ollie, but ollies are my favorite, you know, one of my favorite things to shoot. And this one was great just because it was just such a weird spot. Like, it's just like an industrial wasteland, and it's a naturally occurring skate spot. And, you know, obviously for all the purists out there, like, that's about as good as you can get, really.
Yeah. And
I think one other guy, the photographer Mike Hikila,
Oh, yeah.
sent me an Instagram photo maybe just a couple of years ago if somebody did a trick out of it. But that's the only other thing I've ever seen on that spot. So either A, nobody's ever found it again, and B, it's so hard to skate that.
Yeah, nobody really wants to give it a
even
try.
bothered to try skate it. Yeah, so, and that was the thing with Barbee, is he was all about getting,
interesting spots.
Yeah, interesting spots, but also like finders, not finders keepers, but like, what do they call it? Like the chef's delight, basically. Like you get the first taste.
Yeah.
And, it didn't really matter if anyone came along and did anything harder or better, because it's like he found the spot first. And that's something that, listening to him talk about it since and learning it while living in New York City, but like in the graffiti culture, it's kind of, there's a lot of that. It's the one guy that can climb up on that sign and get his tag up there first. Who was brave enough to do it, or who thought to do it there, and in the same in hip hop, it's like who had that rhyme style first or heard that line first. And I think Bobby, whether he knows it or not, or whether I don't even know if he would claim this or not. Maybe he would, but a big part of skating for him, and I think for any skaters that are like have any kind of respect for that, is like that's part of the thrill of it, is like finding and being the first person to do a trick at a certain spot.
Yeah.
And then, people can say whatever they want, but if you're doing something on something that somebody else has found, then
it's not the same.
It's not the same. To me, it's not the same. And I always gave Bobby a lot of respect for that and a lot of credit, because, he might have put a few people's noses out of shape with his strong opinions, but at the same time, like, what are you going to say?
Yeah.
He puts in the he puts in the work, he puts in the miles, he finds the stuff, and whether he did the best trick on it or not, or whether, I don't think he ever really claimed the spot as his own. He's just saying, well, he found it first, like, and that was definitely a privilege of shooting with him, is that I was able to record those, and then if the photo got published, well, then it's there for all sort of eternity for anyone to see. So definitely got a lot of respect for Bobby for that.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a privilege to be able to shoot that, definitely. But along with Pluhowski and a few others, he's another salty East Coast.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm sure.
Strobeck, Pluhowski. Anyone that wasn't from New York, they definitely just had the snaps. I don't know. Bobby was a character.
Yeah.
We had some good times together, for sure.
Okay, this one is from Alex Papke.
Okay.
So he said, ask Mike what it was like working in the skate industry at a time when you could make a decent living off of working for a magazine.
That's funny, man, because I feel like he's probably making a decent living nowadays. I don't know, maybe. I don't know. It was great. I have to say, it was great. I felt really lucky that I had like, as I said, in the beginning, it was not easy because I didn't really get paid at all in the beginning, and then following that, getting paid by Slappy, it wasn't a lot of money. So, and my rent was like $350, and being single and just on the road most of the time, I didn't have a lot of expenses really. So it didn't take a lot of money to get by and make a living.
Yeah.
But, as I moved on to like Skateboarder and then Transworld, definitely magazine. I got to experience the time when magazines had a bit more, the advertising budgets were bigger and the circulation was better, and the industry basically ran around magazines, like all the, videos, and, a lot of the trips were done for the magazine, and, companies would call the magazine, so there was a lot of perks that came with that. So like free travel, free film, free processing, free gear from skate companies. So yeah, it was fantastic. It was a dream come true, honestly.
Sure, yeah.
And ever since it stopped, life has been miserable. No, I'm just kidding about that. Yeah, it was a golden era, really. It's sort of strange that it doesn't really exist like that anymore. At least not for me. Maybe some people are pulling it off, but yeah, it was great. It's been the time of my life to do that. Getting to go overseas, getting to travel with the best skaters and shoot everything on film, and yeah, it was cool. I don't know what else to say about that. It was glorious, as some people might say.
Yeah.
I wish it never ended.
At the right place at the right time.
Yeah, right place, right time.
And you were the right person, so yeah, it all worked out. So
yeah.
Well, along those same lines, this question is from another photographer, Ben Colen.
Yeah.
He said to ask you which mag was your favorite to work for, or if you had a specific era of shooting skate photos you think is the most fun. That's
a great question. I could answer probably the best mag. Well, my favorite magazine at the time to work for was Slap, so it was really cool to get to work for that. But I will say that towards probably not long after I had been working there for a little while, it started changing a lot. Not in a bad way, it was just sort of different. Lance Dawes moved to Los Angeles and Mark Whiteley became the editor, and it wasn't that it got worse, it just got different. So having said that, when I would say probably, he said what was my favorite or what was my best?
Which mag was your favorite to work for, yeah?
Probably Skateboarder magazine, I think.
Okay.
From those early 2000 years, from like 2000 to 2004 or so. Well, that's really the entirety when I worked there, but it was just good. We had like a good staff, including Ben himself and Oliver Barton and Joey Shigeo and other photographers as well. But working with Aaron Meza was definitely enjoyable. He had good ideas for articles and he was good with the layouts. He treated the photos like respectfully, and like we got to go I went to Egypt, for example.
Oh, nice.
And just the skaters that he wanted to include in the magazine, that was similar choices to me that I thought they were good. And yeah, it just seemed to all sort of gel. That was a good era for sure. And then certainly there was times at Transworld working with Skin that was very enjoyable as well. That was sort of a bit more short-lived just because, I don't know, things were changing so rapidly from about 2007, 8 or 9. So yeah, I worked at Transworld from probably 2004 to 2011 as a full-time staff photographer. But around about 2008 or 9, it started changing because like the budgets were getting smaller, and obviously social media started playing more of a part in videos.
Yeah.
So yeah, towards the end it wasn't as enjoyable. There was just this looming sense of, I don't know, that it was going to go out of business, which it eventually did.
Yeah.
But in the beginning it was very enjoyable. But probably out of all those, Skateboarder was probably a couple, like just interesting. Like I feel like we're doing interesting articles. I was shooting good photos that were getting used well, you know, whether it be for a double-page spread or a cover or an interview or something. But certainly Slap as well in the early days when I was living in New York. They were definitely making good use of the photos. And I mean, that's a key part of the enjoyment factor for a photographer. If the magazine's featuring your work handsomely and well, then that's going to up the enjoyment factor.
Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
for sure. Yeah.
But having said that, it was like, you know, it was great to see all the other work that other photographers are doing. Just being part of a collective sort of creative outlet was really enjoyable, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. This one is from Seu Trinh.
Yeah.
So he said, ask him where he sees the future of skateboard photography going towards. And what does he want to see happen that didn't happen yet? And who he likes shooting skate photos now.
So, what was the first part?
The first part was, where do you see the future of skate photography? Where do you see it headed, kind of, yeah?
That I do not know. But I mean, I would hope that there's still outlets for it. Like, I like that people are starting their own magazines outside of the industry kind of standard magazine. Magazine. There's only one US one, but some quite good magazines coming out of Europe. And I don't know what, as far as like innovations and that type of thing, but I would hope that there's still an outlet other than, you know, digital social media for skate photography, just because it's really enjoyable to see skate photos printed, or I don't know, just I would hope that it continues to
exist in a physical form.
To not only exist, but just to develop. Whether it's some new and exciting format that you can view things in a different way. But I don't know. It's hard. Like you see so much photography now on the phone, and not as much in printed format. But I would hope that it still exists into the future, because there's something quite satisfying about seeing just, you know, something you can hold up in your hands, and whether it's a great trick photographed well. And I don't think that'll ever. I would be it would be very sad if that ceased to exist. So I'm not sure what the future holds, but if it doesn't hold that, that's going to be a problem.
That would be a little bleak. For sure.
Yeah, exactly.
And what about skate photographers that have caught your eye in the present moment? Like, are there?
Yeah, there's definitely a few of the younger guys that are doing. I mean, I like Alex Papke's photos, definitely. Sam Muller, always, although he's not so young anymore. And definitely, probably a lot of the European guys like Rafsky. Who else? Sam Ashley, I like his photos.
Yep.
Jake Darwin's nice. Who else?
There's one guy that seems to have been all over the Matt Price, I think, is.
Matt Price is great.
Are everywhere, kind of.
Yeah, Matt Price is great.
Okay, this one is from Blondey McCoy.
Oh, okay, cool.
He said, ask him if he had ever thrown a seagull off a balcony before that time in Monaco. He did so then with the grace of a seasoned pro.
You know what? I had never thrown a seagull off the balcony before that day. And you know, it was funny. It was just one of those situations that it became obvious to me that the poor bird was like stuck and it couldn't. It was a glass wall in the balcony, and we had been out skating, and I think somebody had left a sandwich out on the.
Oh yeah, okay.
And so it had found enough reason to come and land there, but for whatever reason, it couldn't figure out how to. You know, the balcony railing was only stomach high. It could have flown up and over, but it just kept flying into the glass.
Okay.
And it obviously was stressed, and it
panicking.
It couldn't. And you know that there were some deck chairs there, and I think it probably just felt like it was trapped.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, for whatever reason, the bird was like, its wings were. You know, I was like, how are we going to help this thing? And it just sort of, the way its wings came up, it just presented itself to me in that. And then I was able to release it. But I think if I would have tried to grab it any other way, it would have bit me.
Oh, yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, I've never done that before or since. But I was happy to release it, yeah. It was, yeah.
It left a lasting impression on Blondie.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So he said that was in Monaco. How did you end up with Blondie in Monaco? That's of all places. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think he actually lived there for a time when he was a kid, and I know his dad stays there throughout times of the year. So, but we were there to sort of skate and try and get some photos for his shoe project that he was doing. When he had the shoe, the shoe colorway. Mm-hmm. So, and he had been skating there as a kid, and he's like, oh, there's definitely some good spots there, and there are a few. I think we got a couple of things. We went to Nice and Monaco at the same time, but yeah, it was definitely not your usual location for a skate trip by any means.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, there were some cool spots there actually. Now that I think about it, yeah, and just seeing that part of the world was like, I was surprised to find myself there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, releasing a seagull. I guess.
Yeah.
Why not?
This one is from Lucien Clarke.
Oh, yeah?
So Lucien asked, what's up, Mike, a.k.a. Top Predator, a.k.a. Don O'Milioni? I wanted to ask about the framed photo of Keenan Milton that you blessed me with. What is the story behind that session? You told me briefly, but let's deep it. Let's go deeper into it, yeah.
Well, that was shot, that photo that I gave him the print of. What up, Dark Clark? That photo I gave him the print of was in Sydney, Australia, I think. I want to say 1999. Mm-hmm. And this is a random session because it was Dustin Dolan and Keenan Milton.
Oh, wow.
Who at the time were buddies, really, like probably drinking buddies, partying buddies, but also skating buddies. Yeah, and like we just found ourselves in, that was probably the second year that I lived in New York. So I'd met Keenan in the US with Keith and Gino, and we'd become friendly. But he had decided to stay out in Sydney for the summer for a couple of months.
Okay.
So we were skating around a lot together, and yeah, it wasn't a particularly big rail, but it was just a nice shiny rail right in the middle of the city, right on Hyde Park. And yeah, I don't know, just classic Keenan style, just cracking out the switch crooked grinds. There's not a super deep story behind it, unfortunately, but other than just a classic Keenan moment. Yeah.
Did you meet with Keenan when you lived in New York? But I assume at that time maybe he was spending more time in California.
He was. I think I probably. Yeah, I had met him when he was coming through town. Oh, actually, you know what? I met him when I first really hung out with him. I think it was 1999. I went on a tour with Girl and Chocolate guys for Slap.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure this is 99, but Keith Huffnagel got invited to come on the trip. And there was rumors at the time that he was going to ride for Chocolate, maybe.
Oh, wow.
But he never ended up doing it.
Okay.
But yeah, Keenan was on that trip as well. So that's kind of the first time. Keenan, Mike York, Mike Carroll, Rick Howard, Keith Huffnagel, and I want to say somebody else I'm forgetting. Yeah, all a heavy
legendary
squad for sure.
Squad, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, but we went all the way to New Orleans, to New York. Like we covered and New Mexico. Actually, covered quite a lot of ground. Thinking back on it, and yeah, that's when I first really got to spend some time with Keenan. Mm-hmm. And then I would say that he came out to Australia later that year, like which would be like Christmas time in Australia. So like November, December in Australia. Mm-hmm. And so we were spending a lot, like we were probably skating together every other day for like a month or two. And that's when I shot a lot of those photos in Australia. So that would have been summer of 99, 2000.
Okay. And he passed away was it in 2001?
2001, yeah. So then he came again the next year, actually, so I would have seen him the second summer. Yeah, so, I don't know. There's not a super deep story behind that one, but, I'm just good to have him around in Sydney skating all the local spots. And, yeah, it was cool, man. He just kind of hung out and, like, he was just would sit at the spots with the local skaters. He didn't really have this, like, big-time pro skater
American
personality
pro skater.
about him.
Yeah.
No, he was just... He would come and session the spots with, like, there's another group of, like, local Sydney skaters that became quite friendly with him as well. Like, I wasn't with him every day, but he would go and skate with them, and he was just around. Like, he was just became part of
the crew,
the Sydney scene. Exactly. Yeah, and it was cool. Like, he didn't have this big... He was very, like, down-to-earth guy,
humble.
Actually. Yeah, and just always, like, funny.
Yeah, I heard
very
that
positive
about him.
guy.
Yeah. He seemed like a very positive, fun person to be around. Yeah.
He was. There was some pretty dark skeletons in the closet that I don't know, it's not really my place to go into. Not necessarily the partying, but just other stuff that happened earlier on in his life that I think he was probably masking a lot of pain and trauma. But, he did it by trying to cheer other people up, and that was his personality, But he was great. He was just such a lovely guy, like, always, like, thoughtful of, like, somebody else. If he saw someone down, he'd come and cheer them up, or and just funny jokes, impersonations, characters, and, like, just awesome guy.
Yeah, big legend.
Yeah, and a great skater, just like...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, unique skater.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm glad to... Yeah, like, it's nice to be able to give prints to people that... Like Lucien, for example, that I think is also a great skater.
Yeah, definitely.
And he's quite a bit younger than Keenan, but it's cool when the younger guys, they, like, look up to guys like that and they know them and they respect them. And to have him ask me for a print, that's something that I get a lot of, like... it's quite satisfying. It's, like, quite endearing and... satisfying for me when... of all the skate photos they could have, they want to have that one. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. No,
because it's not particularly, I don't know, it's not a particularly big trick, or I don't know, it's not, it's just a cool photo, I think. And that, that's what I was going back to you before about, I was speaking about the difference with video and photography. It's just a simpler time back then where you could just have a photo of a switch crooked grind on, a 5 or 6 stair rail, and if it's done well and done right and it's the right guy, then that photo is still going to be remembered, like, however many, nearly 30 years later now, actually.
Yeah, we're talking about it right now,
Almost 30 years later, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But so it's quite nice that Lucien has the print of that.
That approach of it, and that view of it,
Yeah. It's interesting to wonder, like, how skaters like he will be remembered by future generations.
Like Lucien? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's still ripping. He's still, he still has a long...
Yeah, absolutely. And, like, in his own special way, he's like, quite, all the things he's done with, like, having the little shoes come out and all the stuff he's done with Palace. And, he's definitely a unique skater.
Yeah, he's becoming kind of an icon in skate, like a...
Yeah, you were asking me before about, my favorite photographers, but there's certainly, people often ask me, like, who's your favorite skater to shoot with, and this, that, and the other. It is hard to choose one skater over everyone, but there's certainly skaters that stand out, and I would put Lucien in there, like...
Oh, yeah, okay.
Up there, like, just style-wise, and also very gnarly when he wants to be, and just personality, plays a lot, and just attitude towards skating, and, just dedicated to try and, like... really focusing on it when he's doing it. And so he's just somebody I've found it really enjoyable to be, like, trekking around the streets of London with him. Good, super good memories of, like, shooting with him. Maybe we'll do it again someday.
Hopefully,
who knows?
Sure.
Yeah.
This one is from Chris Carter.
Okay.
So let's see. He said, can you share some of the best experiences while you were working for Alien Workshop and Habitat as our team photographer, please? You shot so many great photos of the team, especially the guys at Love Park and the skaters that were both on DC and Alien Workshop.
Probably the greatest experience for me was just seeing the results of the photos that I got, just the way that Mike Hill was able to design the ads and just the different things they did with them. And obviously shooting the team was great because all the team riders were pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Dill, Van Engelen, Papalado, Kalis, Rob Pluhowski, all the Habitat riders, Danny Garcia, Salego. And so just working with Mike Hill and Joe Castrucci as well. They both were, like, super passionate about what they did, and it was just very rewarding sending photos into them. And, they never did anything that I was disappointed in, or it was only ever stuff that was surprising and exciting, and I thought they did just a really nice job. And just going on tours with those guys was fun as well. Yeah, it was just a really good time to be working for them, the writers and just the art direction of the company and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was all pretty enjoyable.
How long did you work with the Ellen Workshop guys?
I think officially probably from around, I'm really going to have to think about this now, maybe around 5 years, I think.
Okay. Do you remember what years that might have been?
Let me just check these bindings here. Okay, so I think it was around 99 till around 2005 or 6, so probably 5 or 6 years total.
So you were shooting as they were getting into filming for Minefield?
Yeah, kind of. I came in the end of photosynthesis and then the start of Minefield, yeah. I mean, there was a few years in between, like where it was just the Mosaic video. That's around when I really started. I was shooting those guys before I officially started working for them. Mm-hmm. But then probably around the time Mosaic coincided with me working full time. So there was a lot of stuff for that I shot. And then probably by the time Minefield came around, I was no longer officially working for them, but I was still shooting a lot of like Van Engelen and Dill and those guys. So yeah. And
do you remember why it ended? Kind of like, did you just transition?
I actually don't remember, but from my memory, that it wasn't any sort of anything bad that happened, or I'm not sure. I just think that maybe they didn't have the need for it anymore, or I'm not sure actually why. Okay. I do remember it was around the time that I was in LA a lot more. So maybe that had something to do with it, but I actually don't remember.
Okay, this one is from Dimitry Elyashkevich.
Yeah.
So he said, what is your favorite Halloween costume you've ever had?
Well, I mean, I didn't always dress up for Halloween, but I think when I still lived in New York, we had a few fun ones. And he's probably referring to the time I dressed up as Chopper from the movie. Yeah, that was a pretty good one. Yeah, we had some fun with that. Yeah, had some fun times with Dimitri over the years too. He's great, Probably one of the more well-rounded, well-grounded skate photographers. Like, didn't take it too seriously, but also had like a natural flair for it. Yeah, he's like a really a unique character. Mm-hmm. Very New York based, but then mostly the time I knew him, he lived in Los Angeles. So yeah.
So you met with him initially in New York when you first got there?
No, I met Dimitri actually the first time I came to California, just randomly. On the vert ramp at the ASR trade show, actually. Oh, wow. Okay. And he was cool, man. He was just kind of like, thought the whole thing was a circus, and it really was. And yeah, he was just like a really sort of down-to-earth kind of, I don't know, I think he sort of saw the whole skate industry maybe with, I'm trying to think of the right way to express it. Like, just took it with a grain of salt, didn't take it too seriously. Could see the ridiculousness of a lot of it. And I don't know, he just had a really good, witty sense of humor. Super cool guy. What up, Dimitri?
Cool.
Give him a shout out.
All right, let's see. This one is from Ray Barbee.
Mm-hmm.
He says, you're the man, Mike, one of my all-time favorite photographers. Is there a skate photo that after seeing it, you knew that that's what you wanted to do?
Well, that's so cool because I think Ray's the man too. Like, absolute super cool guy, legendary skater, great musician, photographer. So yeah, it's cool to be like just be able to bump into him and become pals. And
did you shoot with him? I assume over the years.
I never really shot a skate photo of him. I don't think. Oh no, that's not true. Actually, that is not true. I have shot a photo of him during the time that he was writing for Element.
Do you remember what trick that was?
I think there was a few things. I drove down to Long Beach once or twice and ended up skating with him. He was just like a cool bank to wall, and he wallied off the corner. Pretty sure I still have the photos somewhere. Not sure it ever ran anywhere, but shot it on a medium format camera. I'm trying to think. The question was
like if there was a photo that kind of made you want to start shooting skate photos yourself, I guess.
Oh, okay.
At least that's how I understand it, but yeah.
Yeah. I might have referenced this earlier, but just a lot of those early 90s photos that were in Transworld, Slap, Power Edge,
Grand Brittain, and all those guys.
So yeah, all of those, anything by those photographers that I named, like Sturt, Grant, Lance Dawes, Gabe Morford, Spike Jones, Tobin. Yeah, I couldn't. There's multiple photos. It's pretty hard just to place it on one. Yeah. But just sort of that era. Early Transworld and Slap and Power Edge was, I say early, but early for me. So probably anything from 89, 90 onwards. That's really kind of when I started getting my hands on those magazines and seeing them here and there. And I used to really like Street Sheet, actually. It was a one spread in Transworld, and it wasn't always a trick. It was just like little moments of, more sort of photojournalistic moments. I remember those always really standing out to me. People
What
like
was it
wrestling
called?
with security guards, or it was called Street Sheet. It was sort of like a street life type of, it was just this is probably in the sort of late 80s, early 90s of Transworld, but
Okay.
yeah, just all the photos by those photographers that I named, those were all really inspiring.
Influential.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard to pick one. I wouldn't even try just to pick one. Yeah.
Oh, this one is from Grant Brittain.
Mm-hmm.
He said, when I think of a look I want for my photos, Mike is one of the ones I borrow from. So that's not much of a question, kind of a shout out or a compliment, I guess. But
well, that's obviously really humbling to hear that, because he's obviously, a veteran of the game, a grandmaster himself, like a maestro.
Yeah.
And also just a great guy. He's always really supportive and helpful, and yeah, that's nice, man. He's someone I certainly looked up to for a long time, and still do, actually. Still find great inspiration in what he's doing, and posting all his old stuff and new stuff, and still getting out there. And yeah, I mean, I'm 51 myself now. Not sure how old Grant is, but I think he's 60 something.
I think he's in his early 60s or late 50s.
Yeah, that's just so cool that
Mm-hmm.
he's still like dedicated to it, and obviously he loves it. I think that's one of the most inspiring things I took from Grant, is that you could tell he just had a besides running a magazine, and obviously he's doing it for a living and supporting his family, all those things, but you could just tell with certain photographers there's a passion and an enjoyment that comes through, and
yeah,
that's something that I certainly took inspiration and from him. Yeah, so that's a great compliment to get that from somebody that I've looked up to for a really long time. That's awesome.
for sure.
Big shout out to Grant. Thanks for all the years of dedication.
This is just a quick side question from me, but I was thinking of this, that I know that, for example, people who want to start tattooing, to become tattoo artists, they do a kind of apprenticeship with tattoo artists,
Right.
It's not like you can go to a formal tattooing school or whatever it's called.
Right, sure.
You need to spend time at a tattoo shop, observing how they do it, learn about the process, the materials, everything. So I was wondering if there was something somewhat similar in skate photography, and if you remember either doing that yourself, kind of doing a form of apprenticeship with a skate photographer, or the opposite, if you have ever, groomed upcoming skate photographers and kind of showed them some ropes.
Well, that's funny, because I don't think there was one particular person that I did an apprenticeship with, and being in Australia, I was a long way away from where
The industry?
it kind of was all happening. But having said that, those particular couple of guys like Grant, Lance Dawes especially, and to a certain extent Tobin, Thomas Campbell, Gabe Morford, those guys were all sort of really I just found them to be open, and they were definitely considerate of me, and I was trying to be mindful of not asking him too many questions. But having said that, they were all, from my memory, being really helpful. I think I sort of tried to learn a lot of it by myself, but also there were questions that I had, and it's a long time ago, so I don't remember. Obviously, I was probably pretty green. I was probably annoying, I'm sure, at some point, but I do remember those guys all being really,
motivating or
were just
helpful.
welcoming towards me. They never sort of turned me away, or, they weren't jerks about it by any means. Just encouraging enough to sort of keep me going on my way. And, obviously skate photography is a lot of trial and error, so you have to kind of make the mistakes yourself. But I think having someone that you can just share your photos with and say, to hope to get some feedback, because it's sort of, I didn't have the opportunity to sort of sit and watch somebody else in person. Mm-hmm. Oh, not anyone on that level, I guess. But so that was something that I kind of had to figure out by myself. But maybe on the times that I went to visit the US, I was able to hang around with Tobin a little bit, or certainly Lance Dawes, and those guys were all super cool about that. They weren't really dismissive of me or secretive or anything like that. But it's a good question. And then having to answer the other side of your question, there's definitely been a few younger guys that I saw coming up that I've tried to share the same encouraging spirit towards. Certainly Sam Muller was a young guy when I met him, 17, that went on to become a hugely inspiring and successful photographer in his own right. He's done amazing work and continues to do amazing work. But he was somebody that lived in the same neighborhood as me, and I ran into him just at the camera store, and he was just cool, and he was always down to help out if I needed some help with anything, and he just kind of hit the ground running himself. So there's been a few other younger guys, or younger than me, guys that I've sort of tried to give pointers to and free film to and just pay it forward. Yeah. But Sam's one that I've definitely, I would say, I started out mentoring him, and I would probably consider him a mentor now. He's definitely, he's just really come into his own in many ways, you know,
Sure.
as a photographer, as started his own magazine, and just very creative and motivated, and you know, a student and also a master of photography, but a lover of photography, like not only just skate photography. So that's something that I take great humility and motivation from, knowing Sam and like watching him do his thing. And yeah, it's cool. He's somebody that I certainly, it's been great watching him progress, and yeah, he's definitely inspiring and motivating to know.
All right, this one is from Chris Yormick,
Yeah, cool.
Art director at Skateboarder. So he said, was there ever a moment that you didn't capture that still rolls around in your head?
There's definitely more than one. I couldn't, again, it's sort of hard to name them. There's things that I see every day that I'm sort of like, oh, I wish I had my camera, or I see things that I wanted to shoot photos of and I didn't for whatever reason. But yeah, it's a part of it. I think sort of once that part of your brain becomes active to the level that you're gonna, you know, it's hard to turn it off, I think. There's probably thousands of, but I couldn't name a specific
Do you
trick
usually
or moment
walk
or
around,
something
like for example, if you, let's say you just go for a walk around your neighborhood or something, do you bring a camera with you?
I go through stages of doing. I used to do it probably a lot more, but nowadays it seems like maybe not so much. But it depends. I'll go through phases of it where I'll just take a camera with me and see things and just try and capture them. And other days when I don't have the camera is often when you see the coolest stuff. But you know, it's one of those things where I don't take myself to task for not carrying a camera. I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, I'm not so besmitten by photography that I have to have a camera on me at all times. Like my eye and my brain sees things, but I don't know. I think it's just it's hard to quantify and justify, and just the amount of images that you constantly recognize. And I don't know if I'd have the capacity to archive all those, you know, catalog them all, do something with them. Maybe I don't know. That's me, but I don't know if I have the capacity to be shooting every day like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Some guys do it and they love it and they see things like it's quite inspiring. But for me, I think maybe it's just sort of, I have to pace myself a little bit more with it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Are there times where you deliberately like go out without a camera and you try to switch off that part of your brain that's always kind of scanning for potential good photos to take? Or
I never deliberately try to switch it off.
Okay.
But, it's something that, you know, you'll find yourself unaware of it at times, or other times aware of it where you could be like, oh, I really wish I had the camera. But I mean, look, it's just, as I get older, it's sort of, you know, life is also for living as well. You know? As much as you'll see cool moments, but I mean, it's a very abstract concept, photography, like capturing real life, putting it in a frame, and then putting that picture either on a website or making a print of it, or making a book of it, putting it in a gallery. It's still, I haven't totally come to terms with it, I suppose. Some days I feel very excited to capture it and it looks like something that makes sense, and other days it just seems like a very, you know, as the person behind the camera, I'm starting to, maybe as I get older, I'm starting to reflect more. Who does that make me? What is it about me that I'm trying to show things to other people rather than just experience them for myself?
Yeah.
You know? So then that's something I guess I grapple with that. I haven't totally realized it yet, but I'm comfortable with having a camera, but I'm also comfortable not having a camera, I guess. That's a deep question.
Yeah. No, for sure.
The photographer's psyche, I guess. Yeah, it's funny, when I was younger and I got into it, it was obviously a burning passion and desire to capture like good skate imagery. Like there was a very clear focus of doing that. And I did it for a long time and I still like to do that. But in terms of other things that I photograph, I'm just working my way through what my motivations are for that. And
Okay.
So yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's a never-ending task, kind of. It's not like there's a moment where you'll be, oh, okay, like I think it's done, like I've covered it all.
Yeah, I think it's at least for me, it's something when it just kind of takes over you, when you really get going on something. And maybe I'm the type of person that if I don't have an assignment assigned to myself or make one for myself about a certain topic, then just walking around freely with the camera isn't something that I genuinely
enjoy?
I mean, I'm not opposed to it. It's just not something I find myself doing with any great regularity. So, and I'm fine with that also.
And was there, just to wrap it up with Chris's question, was there a specific maybe skate photo moment that you, for example, I don't know, you either the film had ended or
I mean,
or
there's been lots of those.
Like missed opportunities, basically.
Yeah, there's been some for sure. But I think they're certainly outnumbered by the ones that haven't been missed.
Yeah, for sure.
At least in my experience. So, and I don't know. It's not that I want to bury them or not discuss them, but I can't think of one.
Yeah, there's not one
that's
comes spontaneously. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there's several, but they aren't so critical that I'm losing sleep over them.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
It happens. It just happens. It's sort of human nature.
Yeah, it's part of the process. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. This one is from Aaron Meza.
Oh, nice.
He said, "Hey Mike, is Otis still rocking with Chris Joslin? And if not, who is his new favorite skater? Has he landed any tricks that you've never done? And finally, have you had him roll in at 5 Dock yet? Miss you guys."
Okay, that's so cool. Well, it's funny because I feel like he knows the answer to that first part. When Otis first got into skating, which is, what is it now, 2025? Yeah, so he's probably been skating nearly 4 years now. So my son is 13. My son
13.
Otis is 13. Yeah, almost 14. But when he first started getting into it and learning, once he could learn to ollie, he was really super into Chris Joslin.
Oh yeah, okay.
For a while, and he was a big fan, and which was cool because obviously Joslin's amazing and he's gnarly, but his tastes have developed and changed over the 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
His favorite skaters now, he's definitely more into the small, more underground companies. He definitely likes the Max Palmer, the Cyrus Bennett's.
Oh wow, really?
This style of guys, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
And who else does he like?
That's so interesting to hear. A 13-year-old kid would have. I mean, of course, I appreciate it, but I would have assumed a 13-year-old kid would favor Chris Joslin and Nyjah.
Well, I mean, he
jumper,
did in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's definitely into the more creative style skaters who spot innovators, and I just kind of with him. I don't really try to school him too hard because he's just off on his own. His interest in it is so it's his own. In the beginning when he first started skating, he was getting really upset. I think he was only been skating a couple of months, and he was got upset about something, and he's like, "I'm never going to be good enough to be pro." And I was like, "Oh, dude, come on." This isn't
2 months in.
You're gonna sit.
You have to be patient.
2 months in, and I sat down. I made him watch Animal Chin.
Okay. Yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah, just to be look, it's not about. It could be whatever you want it to be, but I was for me, and this is what it's about having fun with your friends.
Yes, absolutely.
And he sort of found that all on his own. I really wanted to. I was definitely mindful of. I didn't want to force anything on him too hard, just because
your own history with skateboarding and everything.
Yeah, I have such a long history with it, and I just thought it better to he can come to it of his own discovery. I didn't want to
influence him.
It's being a father is you're already trying to do your homework, do your dishes, you're doing some not forceful behavior, but there's certain things you have to say please and thank you, be respectful to your
Yeah, you're setting up the whole frame to go through life.
You're already imposing all these conditions on them that are sort of just basic conditions for living.
Mm-hmm.
So that one, I don't know, maybe it's just my reaction to it. I was just I'm just going to let him. He tries to show me some videos. I'm like, no, I can't, I'm not interested in that. I don't want to watch it. And then there was a while for a minute where he was watching Gifted Hater a lot.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And he started catching a little attitude. I was like, you know what? You can't watch that anymore. I'm sorry, you cut. I had to cut him off from that. I mean, the guy's obviously very funny, but my son who's 11 or 12 years old, I was like, you're too young to be getting this jaded and opinionated. You've got to enjoy it a bit more. But, it was probably too late. He's already jaded and opinionated. But, he has his own interest of, he just got a pair of Asics shoes.
Oh, yeah.
He was wearing Nike Blazers for a while, and I was like, wow, you're really going to wear those? He's like, yeah, I love them because of da-da-da, and
What speaks to him with Asics? Is it the videos that Jacob is putting out and stuff like that?
I'm not sure.
Or?
I think he just likes that it's, not a mainstream shoe company.
Okay.
I'm not sure. And then he just found this particular blue pair that I was surprised that he wanted to wear them because he's been in Blazers forever and he wears that.
He wanted something different.
Yeah, he just went and got them. And this is just 2 or 3 weeks ago. but he's had the same pair of Blazers for like 8 months maybe, and they're destroyed. And he's been begging me to buy him new shoes, and like I just wanted him to kind of like, I feel like it's a bit of a rite of passage as a skater to have shoes with holes in them.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's just learning to appreciate the things that you have. And so there's all these little micro lessons that, you know, I've trying to, without being, you know, I don't want to be an over-the-top skate dad, basically.
Sure, of course, yeah.
I've seen that recently with kids, like 10-year-olds, and their dads want them to be in the Olympics. And
yeah.
You know, that's not it for me at all. But I will say, like, to get back to Meza's question, like, he's already landed in Ollie Impossible. I've never done that. He's done half cab flips. He kickflips like really well, I think, and my kickflips are horrible. I haven't done one in probably nearly 6 or 8 years, I think.
Yeah, same here.
He will say probably there's a whole bunch of other tricks that he's done that I haven't done, because I think he gets a bit of a kick out of that. That's saying he's a better skater than me. But you know, like, I think the best thing is he likes the best when I go skate with him. And a lot of the days now I'm taking him to the skate park and filming him and filming his little tricks, but you know, he's getting meeting some friends and getting his own little skate crew together, and yeah, so it's cool. He's really just come to it all on his own.
Does he still want to be pro, or like is it something kind of?
I think now he's sort of thinking about. He talks about like wanting to be a graphic designer, or maybe getting into video editing and stuff like that.
More creative.
Because he's got other friends he's got other friends that are his age that are like really good, like they're getting sponsored and stuff.
Okay.
And
he kind of feels like he's probably not at that same level.
Maybe well, he doesn't really talk about it.
Okay.
But I think he's enjoying, like, he likes to go skate. He wants to be part of something, like, they like make little videos and whatnot, but I think he's realistic about, I don't know, well, that's one thing I've told him. I was like, dude, you know, like, obviously I've been lucky and I've made a career out of being a skate photographer, but, you know, at 51, I don't know. I tell him, like, you want to get something else that you can rely on besides just, I was like, the skate industry is
gnarly, yeah.
It's gnarly. You can't really count on it, as it's not reliable.
For sure.
And I don't know. Now that that's just me being a parent.
No, of course. You want the best for him, and you want to make sure he's gonna, you know, go through life in the best possible way. So
yeah, and my relationship with the skate industry is, I don't know. I don't want to say it's finished, but it's not what it once was. You know?
Yeah.
So that's why I want him to think that, like, it's not.
It's not the perfect picture that he kind of sees. Or,
it's not the top of the mountain, exactly. Yeah, and it's very flaky and
not as glamorous as it seems. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, he said, "Have you had him roll in at 5 Dock yet?"
Oh no, absolutely not.
Okay, is that what is that? Is that a skate park?
It's an old skate park. They've built a new skate park around now, but it's a capsule bowl with no flat bottom, and it's really rough and. Obviously legendary story, but also true, as Jake Phelps knocked himself out trying to roll in on it.
Oof. Oh wow.
Yeah, and I would not roll in on it, so I'm not going to make Otis roll in on it.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Maybe wait a few years or do something else.
Yeah, do something else, exactly. But I've sent Meza a few little updates of Otis's skating progress. And, yeah. And we just laugh because, like, you know, we did work together for quite a few years there, and like, you know, there's a lot of maybe unspoken but just outlooks on skating, and like, because I'm fairly sure Meza has 2 sons also, and I think they're not really into skating, but it's just a trip to have your son that's like, you know,
following your path. It's
kind of. I mean, I don't know if he's necessarily, but yeah.
I mean, he's not talking about photography yet, but it's interesting. Everything you just
he's
mentioned.
Sort of shown. He's not like he's shown some interest, but more so like I'll talk to Meza about aspects of his personality that are skate related, like how he's already jaded about stuff, you know, nothing's cool, you know. And Meza will joke like, he's a skater, or he's definitely a skater.
Yeah.
You know, those types of things. Yeah.
Okay, so let's wrap it up with this last question from Greg Hunt.
Okay. I'm going to say, can you see...
is that him in the background? There? Oh, okay. I was wondering who that was. I couldn't tell. Okay.
Yeah, it's the original painting by Brian Loddy.
No way.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I'll show it to you.
Oh, yeah, please. I'd love to see it.
That's on my archives back.
Oh, yeah, I see the girl logo thing. Yeah. So cool. Wow. Let's see who's there. Can't recognize who that is. Is that Keith?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't shoot this one. This actually Gabe Morford shot it, but
Oh, wow.
Dimitry Elyashkevich gave this to me as a birthday present for my 40th birthday. He had it.
Okay.
But it's since fallen off the bookshelf. Like the
Oh,
frame's
yeah.
cracked,
Oh,
but
too bad. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, I kind of like it though still anyway.
Yeah. It's sick.
Look at this weird photo frame.
Yeah, it is odd. Yeah. You said it's a Gabe Morford shot that?
Gabe Morford shot it, I believe,
Wow.
yeah. But it's when he had the helmet hair.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I recognized him. I was like, who's that?
It's kind of
Yeah.
fading, but what are you going to do? I don't know.
So Greg said, hello, Mike. First, I'd like to acknowledge our friendship and thank you for the decades of companionship at great times, both on the
Nice.
road and off. Through all of my years, the shooting and traveling with you are among what I remember most fondly. Even you hard-kicking a soccer ball directly into my face on an early Barcelona morning when I was hungover didn't waver my feelings for you as a friend and an artist. My question relates to your approach to photography. I remember you always digging in harder than anyone while out shooting, getting yourself in the most uncomfortable positions, up on some sketchy wall or face down on the hot concrete to get the best shot possible. What was it that drove you to always capture a great image, and how would you define a great photograph? Thank you.
That's awesome. Sorry about the soccer ball. Non-intentional foul, 100%.
Of course.
Yeah. I'm surprised to hear that Greg was hungover, actually. He's always on top of it, yeah, always. That's funny. Yeah, Greg has been a great friend also for so many years as well. You know, I first met him in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. So before you moved to New York then?
Yeah. No, the first time I ever came to the US, I think.
Was he writing
And
for Stereo at that time, or was that
he
done
might have
already,
just been,
or?
but he was also working at a pizza delivery place. And we figured this out years later once we kind of became, working together and that kind of stuff. And I said I remembered, because I think he must have been writing for Stereo, because I remember meeting him and saying, oh, yeah, that's him. But he wasn't skating. We met him just in the middle of somewhere, and he was working at some pizza restaurant at the time as well as skating. But that's a great question. I don't know. My motivation for doing that was just out of respect and admiration for the skater. I think if they're really doing something that I thought was worth taking a photo, then I'm going to go to whatever levels I could
give it everything.
Think, yeah, exactly. And if that, I would say it jokingly sometimes, but if I found that the more uncomfortable I was, the better the photo that would be. So it was like suffering for my art in a way. But that's just the nature of skating and street photography, is that you're not in some studio where you can sit on a nice cushioned chair and have somebody bring you an iced tea and wipe the sweat off and take the camera off you. That's just how it is. And there's a lot of days where you skate around with your equipment and nothing happens. So in general, I think there's a lot of struggle involved in that. So that was something that I was already kind of used to, and it never bothered me to sort of be uncomfortable. If anything, I felt that if I wasn't uncomfortable, I was doing something wrong.
Yeah, it was not as fun or not as enjoyable or
I wasn't in the right, it wasn't meaningful, or I wasn't in the right spot. But it just also, I was just trying to say is that was just the nature of being out in the street, is that sometimes the concrete is hot, or sometimes there's something in the way that you need to move. And I don't know, it was just, I never took what I thought was a straightforward approach, because I didn't want my photos to seem straightforward. And then that just comes back again from the influence of all those other great skate photographers that I looked up to, is that I always found their photos to be above average. Mm-hmm. The guys that I really liked, there was something in the photo that I could tell that they'd gone to an extra level of effort to make it, whether it was the lighting, the angle, the framing, or the timing, any one of those four things, that there was some element of it that was, they had done something to exceed an average approach to that. And I just think I just had a gut instinct for that. I couldn't really, it's interesting hearing Greg say that that's what I would do, but I think it just, to me, that's what it took to make the photo good a lot of the time. And if I wasn't trying my hardest, then what's the point?
Yeah.
So, and then to me, what makes a great photo, is that the next part of the question?
He said, how would you define a great photograph? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would define a great photograph, this is what I've kind of always said, is that it's got to have all these, it should have all of these, or it can have all of these basic elements of well lit, well composed, well timed, but then there's always some kind of fifth element in there that's defies explanation, like something going out of the frame or a light source coming from somewhere. I don't know that.
An energy.
There's some photos that are
sort.
just, there's some sort of energy, exactly. There's some photos that are just quite simple and reserved, and I can appreciate them for that. But to me, a photo that I get excited about, that's really, it's the energy of, there's not necessarily chaos, but there's something unexplained in the picture that takes your mind outside of what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Outside of those two dimensions.
To another level, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I personally get excited about. I mean, I can appreciate great photography, but ones that I get really, that stick in my brain are things where there's like some kind of like magic going on, basically. Yeah, it defies simplicity, even though it may be simple.
Yeah.
So, and that's something I try to involve in my own pictures. I don't know, sometimes I've done it, maybe sometimes I haven't, but...
Well, yeah, it can be extraordinary every single time. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's what we aim for.
Yeah. No, it's cool. And we were talking about, right before this question, about you doing maybe a photo book at some point. And Greg has been releasing some in the last few years.
He's been doing really well with those.
Yeah, and it's really cool. And I hope we'll get some books from you eventually. Like, take your time. Doesn't have to be quick, but the world needs it. Yeah, at least one or a few.
I appreciate that. It's just something I've been coming to the right point with, like, just, I don't know, moving and just coming to terms with it. That, you know, I feel like I owe it to myself, but I don't know. I can't leave it too much longer.
Yeah. No, take your time. It will happen at some point, I'm sure. But
no, you're right. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Thanks for the encouragement. We all need encouraging sometimes.
For sure.
Like any artist, I have go through my doubts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Art,
That's normal.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for your time, Mike. I really appreciate
it's good,
it.
man.
This was
thank
awesome.
You. Great
thank
questions.
you so much.
That's it for my conversation with Mike. Check out his website, mikeomealy.com, and follow him on Instagram @mikeomealy to keep an eye on his upcoming projects. Thank you for tuning in. See you soon for a new episode of Beyond Boards.